Yo, Grand Rising, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to the show, Deconstructing Christianity. It's been a minute as we took a holiday break. Took time to move to a new location, and now we are back to doing our lives on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Today, I am going to give about 5 minutes for people to get on. I know that it's been a minute, so people may have forgotten all about me. They forgot about us, y'all. They forgot about us. But we back. We back live and still in San Antonio. So when I say we moved, we just moved from one side of the city to the other side of the city, to the primary part of the city where we live most of our life, where we spend most of our time. So we are back live. I missed y'all, man. I missed y'all. I miss y'all. I miss all y'all. But we are trying. One first thing I want to know is how's the volume? How's the volume in this new setting? I want to know how's the volume. In the previous house that we was in, there was an echo. There was a major echo in the room. Oh shit! Didn't mean to do that. So now that we have changed our space, we now have. I got this little office in this space. Is one of the reasons why we chose this space as well, because it gave me a smaller room, a little office space to be able to work out of. Had to do some soundproofing over that entryway since there's not a full door there. But we trying to make it go well. I know you can hear me, James, but I want to know how well. How well can you hear me? I'm glad you didn't forget about me, Mini Boss. It's only been a week. It's been like 2.5 weeks actually. So we had a good holiday time frame. Did you guys have a good holiday? So we moved from one side of the city to the other side of the city. Then the day after we moved, we got on the road. Stopped in New Orleans, went to Atlanta, went to North Carolina, then came back through. On our way back, we stopped in one of the places we stopped in was Baton Rouge. We got to spend time with Sherry. Sherry came out and her daughter came out to have dinner with us in Baton Rouge. So we had a really good time. Got a great conversation sitting and talking to them. So like I say, when we travel, I let you guys know. And Sherry made good usage of it by coming out and meeting us for dinner in Baton Rouge. So just want to give a little shout out to Sherry that I appreciate her meeting up with us. Appreciate that. So we had a good time. I haven't seen a Facebook comment yet. I've seen TikTok comments over here on TikTok. We stream live on TikTok. We stream live on Facebook and YouTube over here. Haven't seen a Facebook comment. Got the check mark on Facebook. So I need somebody in Facebook to say yay, nay, hip hop, hooray, something. So I know that Facebook is working properly. So we are back. Great. I hope you guys had a great holiday season. We got back, got some rest, put everything together. I mean, you can't see what else is in here, so. But this room should take away all that echo we had in that previous house that we was in. So today we're going to have a conversation. Of course, there's been many things that has happened in the news. There's many things that's happened in the world. Tons of videos that I've seen that I wanted to do videos about. But we're going to start this first live of the year. And the conversation is about, is there any proof of a historical, biblical Jesus? And that's the question, which should be a question that is incredibly important to anyone who is a follower of this faith, and anyone who have walked away from this faith, such as I have and many others have. Is there any proof of a biblical historical Jesus? Yeah, let me get your early answers. We know Bishop Nubs has already said no. Uh, what's you guys' initial thoughts? Type in the comments. What's your initial thought? Is there any proof of a biblical, historical Jesus, meaning the Bible version of Jesus, not what and I'm gonna call them like I see them. Some of the chicken shit scholars will still give in to the notion of a biblical Jesus being historical. Well, they'll give into a historical Jesus and individuals. Okay, so I know Facebook is working. Rupert, thank you for making a comment so I can know Facebook is working correctly. And Rupert, your comment is more semantical in a sense. So let me say it so that Rupert can answer the question correctly. Is there any proof of a historical, biblical Yeshua? Does that make better for you? I mean, we know that the whole name from Yeshua to Jesus is an interpolation. It's not a translation. It's an interpolation of the name Yeshua. But of course, the Jesus character is the same as the Yeshua character. It's just interpolated through different languages. One language couldn't pronounce Yeshua, and so they gave their own name, which was Ius in the Greek, and then the Latin translated from the Greek to Latin and made it Isus. But in the Germanic language of English, they maintained the Isus, and when the J was incorporated in around 15 to 1600, it became Jesus. But it is still speaking of the same character. The same Jesus that you see in your Bible, when it's listed him as Jesus, is the same that is listed in the Codex Sinaiticus, Codex Valentinus, Codex Alexandria. It is still the same Isus, Ius, back to Yeshua. So that is semantical. So the question, now he says that there is a historical Jesus. No, there is actually not a historical biblical Jesus. There has never been a historical biblical Jesus. There's not even one person that you may be able to say is a historical Jesus. But the historicity of the Jesus character, which many people are going to come on here and talk about, Tacitus and other historians, and I'm not going to give away the whole thing right now, but they're going to talk about that guy, those guys, Pliny the Younger. You're going to talk about Suetonius. I'll up in those once somebody says it. But these people are talking about what people believed, not actually giving an identification of this person actually lived. So we will we know that when you read the writings of Josephus, people are going to proclaim Josephus spoke of Jesus. Josephus did not speak of the biblical Jesus, but multiple Yeshuas. So it's going to be entertaining, and I'm hoping that we get someone who thinks that the eyewitness account of the New Testament is their validation for a biblical Jesus. So I look forward to this conversation today. We're going to go right into letting people come on. So let me put the link out here. You know, normally I would pontificate for a bit. Go ahead and put out the reasons why I would say what my answer would be, and why I would say that there is no historical biblical Jesus. For those who do not want to hear the debate aspects of this show. But quite frankly, since I started about 45 minutes out to an hour later than I intended to, because there was a few things I didn't set up correctly in here, and it's weird. My laptop directly connected does not go as fast as being on Wi-Fi, which I thought was interesting. So we're going to see if, well, there was someone on TikTok. Let's see if there's another person. Um,
What's up? Welcome up.
How you doing? What's your name?
Izeki.
Izeki. Okay, I didn't want to mispronounce it when I first saw it.
No, you're good.
So
there's actually lots of
wait. Before you start talking,
I would say there's
before you start, sir, before you start talking,
oh yeah,
I need a qualifying question. Are you over the age of 21?
Yeah, obviously.
Well,
Yes.
There's no obvious because I can't see you.
I said 12. Yeah.
I said 21.
Oh, 20. Yeah, I am. I'm 24.
Okay, 24. And are you a believer in Jesus?
Yes, I follow the ways of Christ. He is my God.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So now you were saying that there is ample proof of Jesus, historical Jesus.
So much. Yes.
Give me one.
Paul the Apostle's writings.
Paul never met Jesus.
Yes, he did. And on the road to Damascus.
No.
Acts 8.
Paul met a hallucination. Paul did not meet a physical.
You were wrong. He actually met.
He did.
He actually met Jesus. Jesus actually came to him. He actually says that in 1 Corinthians 15. But you wouldn't know that because you don't read the Bible.
Has Jesus been? Was Jesus walking around?
You don't read the Bible. It's in 1 Corinthians 15.
So
it literally says that
let me establish something else real quick.
Let me talk since this is my life. Obey me real quick. So because he met Jesus on the road to Damascus in Acts 8, he never said it was a vision.
Okay, so first thing you're going to understand is that this is not your life. Second thing you're going to understand, if you cannot have an adult conversation, then there's no reason for you to be on my show. The third thing you're going to understand is that if you are some laughy jokey person, I don't have time for you. And just as you got disconnected with your laughy jokey, want to talk over me mentality, you get kicked to the curb. See, you're 24. I'm 54. I have no time for childishness. So that's why you were kicked off the show. And that even though you are requesting to come back up on my show, you will not come back on my show because you're too immature to have an adult conversation with someone. So I nor the people who actually listen to this show have time for that. So maybe try to get back on the show in about 10 years. Maybe you would have matured within that time frame. So his first claim was that Paul met Jesus. According to Paul's own letters, Paul never said or spoke about on the road to Damascus. This was something that was written by Luke in Acts, that on this road to Damascus, that he had met a apparition of Jesus, not that he had met the physical walking around, eating, sleeping, shitting Jesus. He never met him. This is what Luke is saying, not Paul himself. So to claim that Paul's letters is just someone who is writing concerning a belief that Paul adopted. So Paul's letters are not proof that Jesus actually, a biblical Jesus actually existed. As a matter of fact, if you were to compare Paul's writings and his story, compare the story of Paul, rather, of him meeting on the road to Damascus and so on and so forth, to the Greek epic poem written by Euripides. I think it's what is it called? The Daedalus? I may be pronouncing the name of the poem. I know Euripides wrote it. That had been around for 300 years. During that time frame, was still a very popular play, in the same way that Shakespearean plays are still popular to us today. Paul's story emulates a lot of the motifs of that story. So claiming Paul met Jesus, that's proof, is completely wrong. But he was too immature for me to have a conversation with. And one of the things that we're going to be doing in this new year, this fake ass new year of the Julian calendar, because we know the new year doesn't start until springtime, is that I'm not going to be as tolerant nor as patient as I was in previous years. The laughy jokey, want to talk over me, claiming it's your life. That's not going to happen, little fella. So grow up. Maybe that's the next part of your Christian walk, is for you to grow up and actually become an adult. Because we do adults here. If I start to get too many of those, I will up the age to 30, because some of you 20-year-olds, and I say some because we have had some mature 20-year-olds on here before, right? So yeah, never again will I deal with the immaturities. So maybe we'll get a Christian who actually can have an adult conversation in this live, to be able to talk about the fact that there is no historical Jesus. There's no historical Jesus at all. There's no historical biblical Jesus. Now, there were, if you agree to the writings of Josephus, then there were multiple historical Jesuses, different Yeshuas. You know, you had one that is the brother of James, the son of Damnius. You had one that was a high priest. You had one that flipped tables. You had multiple Jesuses. All right. So there isn't one. Hell, you really can't even validate that Paul was there during this so-called council of Jerusalem, because he never mentioned it. That was Luke who mentioned it. Let's see if we can have an adult conversation. What was your name, sir? What's your name, sir? Hello? What's your name? I can't see his name. Let's see. No King 48. I think No King 48 accidentally hit the button. No King 48. Give you 3, 2, 1. I think it was an accident. All right, that happens. I don't think No King 48 meant to come on here, but that's all right. Oh, he said that was by accident. Cool. Yeah, I know it happens. We also get many people who hit that button by accident. It's all right. What is the poem? Okay, now you got me want to clear that up. It's the poem considering it's talking about Dionysus and how Dionysus, there was a king who was going against Dionysus and wanted to stop the practice of his religion. And we know Dionysus, the one who was born twice, turned water into wine, had his festivals in the woods, rose up into heaven. But in the poem, and I'm sure it was written by Euripides, he talks to this king, and this king doesn't know he's talking to him. And then the king is converted by Dionysus in order to then convert him over to being a worshiper of Dionysus. And I'm pretty sure, let me be correct, because I don't mind. The Bacchae, sorry, I said it was I said it in the wrong play, but it was the Bacchae. So if you ever read the Bacchae, you will find that the story of King Pentheus is very much similar to the conversion of Paul, of not knowing who he's talking to, being a prosecutor of the people who worship Dionysus, and then being converted over by Dionysus. And yes, it's written by Euripides. And Euripides is pretty much spelled the same way that somebody put on here, Euripides with a question mark. Yeah, that's pretty much the spelling, Kevin. That is the spelling, I should say. But yes, the play is called the Bacchae. So, I've said it before. In my opinion, based on the information that we have about Paul is a Roman agent. He's either one, a Roman agent. So let me give you two. He's either one, a Roman agent who was specifically sent out to increase the volume of this pacifistic version of Judaism, or he was a Pharisee. He was a Pharisee or Sadducee who saw an opportunity of a growing religion and pretty much Jim Jones that thing. Or a better, since he didn't do the whole Jim Jones killing everybody thing, I'm gonna flip it and say that he Joseph Smith that thing. You know, in the same way Joseph Smith took some BS and created Mormonism, Paul saw an opportunity to jump onto a new budding religion and become a top dog in that religion, and utilize what he had heard about it, started getting converts, starting making himself an authority within that religion by claiming that he's was given authority by this Jesus character in the same way of the Bacchae. And then after that, start claiming the authority. Oh, I met Peter, you know, and Peter authorized me, which we can see a lot of that happens in the 1st and 2nd century, where people were claiming authority. Like, for instance, Polycarp never tried to claim authority that he was taught by John, but it was one of his disciples, Irenaeus, who then claimed that Polycarp was taught by John, so that you have your apostolic ascension of John taught Polycarp, Polycarp taught Irenaeus, so that gave Irenaeus credibility, authorization, made him one of the old church fathers. Paul is similar in the same way. He's claiming he met Peter, and Peter gave him authority. He met Jesus on a road, knocked off his horse, blinded, same way as King Pentheus, and it was removed. So, yeah, Paul is not a good claim to a historical Jesus. Yeah, you really can't utilize anything in the Bible to claim Jesus is a historical character. That would be like me saying that, oh, well, you know, Allah is real because the Quran said so. Krishna is real because the Upanishads say so. Lao Tzu is real because, you know, hey, the story says that he wrote the Tao. So we're going to, if you want to come up here and defend the historical Jesus, you're going to have to do better. You're going to have to do better. I mean, let's think about something about this, the so-called idea that the Bible, the New Testament is eyewitness confirmation. We all know, and every scholar knows, that there was no authorship by anybody who would have followed this Jesus at the time frame that he was alive. That each one of the Gospels were written anonymously, and that it was Irenaeus, again, himself, in around 180, 182, that actually named them Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Luke goes ahead and says that he was not an eyewitness, though the book of Luke does say that, and that he's just writing from information that he had gathered. But I always was one thing you have to question when you say Luke interviewed those people. So Luke had accounts of the birth of Jesus. Who did he interview for that? Certainly by the time the book of Luke was written, Mary would have been about 100 years old. Joseph would have been about over 100, probably dead. Mary would have been probably dead. Did he go out and find the shepherds who had came to see the baby Jesus? Did he interview them? We know that he could not have interviewed King Herod, but that's not in his narrative to interview Herod. But he claims that Quirinius was governor. Did he go and interview Quirinius? Quirinius. How do you say his name? It's unlikely, and I'm not sure if Quirinius was even alive during that time frame. So, I mean, how did he get this birth narrative? Did he go and interview the Jewish rabbis who would have been alive when Jesus was 12, though they would have been dead by the time Luke was writing this narrative? So who did he interview to get this story? To get the whole the angel Gabriel came and talked to the shepherds. Was he able to talk to the shepherds? Did he find those shepherds? So how did he get eyewitness accounts of the birth of Jesus? It is a narrative that he just created, basing it off of the Matthew version and based off of his lack of knowledge of the Hebrew scripture. So Luke says that he's not an eyewitness, but he claims that he did this research. Don't think he actually did the research. I don't think he actually knew what the hell he was talking about. Who did he interview to find out about the conversation that Jesus was supposedly having with the devil, and no one else was around? The disciples were asleep. Did he interview Pontius Pilate, even though Pilate would have been dead by then, to find out what conversation Jesus and Pilate had? Did he interview the soldiers who supposedly mocked Jesus? I don't think he did. So as far as Luke interviewing eyewitnesses, it's highly unlikely that he would have interviewed any of those witnesses. It's highly unlikely that the writers of Mark, Matthew, and John are actually eyewitnesses to anything that actually happened with this whole Jesus narrative character. So the Bible itself is not an eyewitness nor a testament to the historicity of a biblical Jesus, especially since they are filled with contradictions between one and another. We've beaten that horse dead about the difference in the birth narratives between Luke and Matthew. We know that there are contradictions aplenty within those narratives. So you got to come with something different. Most Christians then throw up Tacitus. That's their favorite. Tacitus. Tacitus wrote about Crestius and the worshipers of Crestius, even though there is some archaeological evidence that suggests that Crestius was a Messiah type before Jesus was even created, that there were already worshipers of this Crestius. But even if we let it be so, Tacitus is writing about what people believe, and Tacitus was also a propagandist. We know now that Nero didn't burn Christians as lamps. That Tacitus just wrote that because he was writing propaganda against Nero, against the Julio-Claudians. He was in favor of the Flavian dynasty. So Tacitus Tacitus just doesn't fit the bill as someone who is saying that a historical Jesus actually existed. And we know that I know lately I'll do a video within the next couple of days that the Pilate letters, the Pilate letters are all forgeries. So we know that the Pilate letter describing Jesus, talking about Jesus, him being a reluctant prosecutor of Jesus, we know that those are 5th century forgeries, at earliest 4th century, but 5th century forgeries that are designed to be anti-Semitic and be in favor of Rome. So we know that that's not true. I mean, the Pilate letters get things wrong that if Pontius Pilate actually wrote it, that he wouldn't have gotten those things wrong. According to those, Pilate names the jurisdiction that he's over as Palestine and Phoenicia, but the land wasn't called Palestine at that time. When Pilate would have been in charge, he wouldn't have been writing to Emperor Tiberius saying that, hey, yeah, as prefect over Palestine, he would have been as prefect over Judea. So we know that it was a forgery written at a time frame when the land was called Palestine, when it was called Phoenicia. Some of his letters also address Emperor Claudius. Well, problem with that is that Pilate was dead when Claudius was emperor, so he would not have written to Claudius. So we know the Pilate letters are not true, that those are forgeries. So Pilate can't be a contemporary that would be able to verify that the Jesus character actually existed, the biblical Jesus actually existed. I'm sure Pilate killed a whole bunch of Yeshuas, as it was a popular name during that era, in the same way that John Smith is a popular name. I'm sure that he killed many of them who were claiming to be the Messiah, as that is the reason why Tiberius was like, look, dude, you over there wilding out in Judea, you being too harsh, and was calling him back. And it was going to kill him. But then Tiberius dies, and then Pilate dies soon right after, before Claudius becomes emperor. So no. You're going to need something contemporary to Jesus. It would be different if Philo wrote about Jesus. Philo was a grown-ass man. He was an administrator in Alexandria, Egypt. He went to conferences to Rome to talk about how the Jews were being treated so harshly. He was very influential and was already writing, and he was writing during the time frame that Jesus was alive, but Philo never wrote about Jesus. Not one word did Philo ever mention Jesus. Not one time. You would think that if there was this large group of Jews and Hellenistic Jews and Gentiles becoming Christian following this new Messiah, Philo, who was very instrumental in how the Romans treated the Jewish people, he would have wrote, but he wrote nothing, not one word. So how do you get this historical Jesus? There's no pottery, there's no statues, there's no paintings, there's no coins, there's nothing but this documentation of the New Testament. And then most of that is written decades to almost 100 years after. John was either written between. So if you take the whole time frame of what scholars say, John is written somewhere between 90 at the earliest and 110 at the latest. So John has a 20-year time frame that it could have been written. So if John was written that late, after a whole bunch of game of telephone, and John is the only one that really says Jesus and God are one and the same, John is pulling on the previous gospels. But he didn't know the man. The writer of John didn't know the man. He's just writing based on a belief, a religion that started decades before, and trying to be something, trying to show something, trying to grab onto this new religion. It will be like, it's just like how you got people today merging, they're taking a little bit of Christianity and a little bit of chakras and making something into something. Oh, look at it, Ed Crunch Me. Am I saying your name right, Ed? Your last name? Because, I don't like saying people's names wrong if I can help it. But Ed Crunch Me finally came on to the show. He always making his comments. He always called me smoking man. It's not what you may think is an insult, Ed, is not to me. So appreciate it, because I love my cigars. This room is too enclosed until I get I'm probably going to have to get a rabbit ear to put on the wall, like a good rabbit ear, before I start having cigars in here, because I don't have any ventilation in this room. Well, I got ventilation, but there's no intake, just a blowout. Ed said, "You're smoking man. 2,000 years of history is based on a lie of a person that never existed. Come on, man." Well, if you're just using 2,000 years of history of something based on a lie, then we can easily look at the story of Abraham and say that we have 4,000 years of history based on a lie, belief that's based on a lie. Now, Abraham never existed. Moses never existed. But we have more years, almost 4,000 years, 4,500 years of Abraham and Moses, and there is absolutely zero proof of any of those two people. In the same way, the Sumerians had their gods. They had their god of Enlil and Enki, and for thousands of years, from around 6,000 BCE all the way up till about the turn of the until we changed the calendar. So you got about 6,000 years of people believing in Enlil, all the way through the Babylonians. Once the Babylonians were swept away, really, that belief probably extended until the Arab conquest. So we got like over 6,000 years of people believing in Enlil and Enki. So the fact that there are thousands of years or hundreds of years of people believing in a deity, believing in a god, doesn't mean that it's true. Because I'm sure, Ed, you would not say that Enki and Enlil are real because people for 6,000 years believed in them, believed in Enki and Enlil. Would you say that? Because that is the same justification that you're giving for Jesus. And if people lived and they died based on their belief, based on believing in Gilgamesh and Ishtar, Elnana. The same can be said about the Hindu religion. It is older than Christianity. It is one of the oldest religions still practiced today. So that would be 3,500 plus years of people believing in Brahma and Krishna, believing in Kali. So, but where's the proof that Brahma exists, that Kali exists? And I like Kali. So your thought process there is coping. You're coping by saying that, oh, something has lasted for 2,000 years, a belief in something. That's called coping. And if you try to say that people lived and died, hell, the Vikings lived and died based on believing in Odin and Thor, prayed for the power of Thor to help them defeat their enemies. Hundreds, if not over 1,000 years of believing in, because if you track the Norse religion, it actually goes back all the way to the time frame of Tacitus with the Germanic religions, with their name not being Odin at that time frame, being Woden, and Woden becomes Odin when it gets to the Norwegian people. So you got over 1,000 years of people believing in Thor and Odin. Does that make it true? Thousands of years, my ancestors believed in Odamare and Oshun and Mamawata and Shango. Does that make any of them true? You see, those arguments fall short every time. Because even today, people die for a lie. Even today, we die for political lies. We die for religious lies. People die for all kinds of things. We're always thrown off like, oh, there were no weapons of mass destructions ever found, and people died because of a lie about weapons of mass destruction. Now, the chemical weapons, they would have said that'd have been different. But people died for weapons of mass destruction, and they found none. People die for many reasons. People die, but people die for lies. It happens. And it still happens. And it will continue to happen. People kill people over lies. And it'll still and continuously happen. Kingsley said, if someone wanted to write a Bible, why would they take time to make a list of family lineage? Because at that time frame, the so-called Messiah was supposed to come from the seed of David. So if you're going to write a New Testament to the Jewish religion, then you have to be able to attach that lineage to the Old Testament, and the lineage of David would be the Old Testament lineage that you want to attach it to. The problem is that the person who was writing, between Luke and Matthew writing this, they didn't have a great concept of um, the Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew. They had a better concept of the Septuagint. And so when they wrote these, they wrote it based on their knowledge of the Septuagint and what it says about the Old Testament. So they tried to connect Jesus to that. So that's why you have to write a lineage for that time frame. Even in our world today, look at Haile Selassie. Haile Selassie, which is probably what 50, 60 years ago, he had to create a lineage of him to Menelik so that he can be connected to Solomon. Yet there's no proof in Haile Selassie's lineage that he actually is connected to Menelik or Haile Selassie. So that's why people are still going to write. That's why they had to write those different, they had to write those lineages. I don't know what you mean by in different continents. They wouldn't. Why would different people from different times have the same story? I don't know what you mean by that one. Have the same story. It depends on what you're talking about. Because if you live in similar environments, everybody has floods. So people all wrote different flood stories. But those flood stories are very different in each versions. And stories are retold. So, and if that's what you're referring to, because you said different continents. It's interesting. I'm getting some of the people who are always, they never want to come on to the live. They always got comments. Oh, let me make a declaration here. I need to be able to see this myself. Shit. Okay, there we go. I can see it. If you're on Facebook, then you've probably seen a lot of Terry's comments. Let me say one thing, Terry, and this also goes for another guy who's on YouTube, who gets all pissy about the fact that I don't read his comments. If you write me these 4, 5, 6 paragraph statements, I don't read those. I get 50 to 100 comments a day, and I do my best to try to go through and read most of them. But this is not my life. Okay, this is not my life. I don't spend the majority of my day doing this. I spend more time studying and reading than other, some PhD papers and whatnot, or some archaeological papers than comments. And I'm not going to read a 6 paragraph comment and then start having a text conversation. If you want to talk to me, come on to my lives. If you want to have an extended conversation, I'm not taking the time to try to go tit for tat or correct or whatever somebody who writes these long ass storybooks in comments. Keyboard warriors don't interest me at all, right? So when you say you sent me a lot of information in my inbox, I saw that you sent me an inbox. I opened it. I saw that it was like 11 pages long, and I went to the next comment. I ain't read it. I'm not going through all that. And especially we disagree. My purpose here is not to try to convert you. So why would I have this long ass conversation with someone that I'm not even trying to convert? And if you want to argue, debate rather, come up on the live. That's just the way I am and the way I will be. So there's that. But since you're here, yeah, and it's obvious you haven't read it. No, I didn't. Christ was never an Arab or a Caucasian man. I never said he was an Arab or a Caucasian man, so I don't know where you get that from. Christ was a Hebrew from the tribe of Judah. The Jesus character never existed, but sure, he's attached to the tribe of Judah. Although his attachment to the tribe of Judah is through a line that was cursed to never sit on the throne of David, which would then not allow him to become the Messiah. So there's that part. There's no letter J in Hebrew alphabet. Well, you must not have been here earlier when I went through how Yeshua and Jesus, same damn person. It's an interpolation. And maybe you need to look up what an interpolation, let me not be that guy. An interpolation, I'll repeat it. The Hebrew name would have been Yeshua. The Greeks cannot pronounce Yeshua, so they use an interpolation, which was Ius. The Latin then translated from the Greek Ius to Isus, and then the English, which is a Germanic language that can translate Yeshua, translated instead the Latin instead of the Aramaic name to Jesus, but it's the same damn person. So that J point is a dead horse that makes no sense. So you need to come with something better than that. But I just want you to know, when you write these long ass things, I don't read them. I never read them. You know, and I'm more apt to respond to people who have legitimate questions of their deconstruction than I am to respond to long ass diatribes. Just not going to happen. Just not going to happen. So, can atheists join the live? Of course. Of course they can. Anybody can join the lives. Don't think that you can't join it. Even if you agree with me, you can't. Doesn't mean you can't join it. I'm more about affirming and helping people to critically think through the process, whether they choose to deconstruct or not. Question, coach. You say good vibration. Yashua actually sounds different from Jesus, and doesn't Joshua sound similar to Yashua? Actually, I do say good vibration. I don't know what the question is concerning that, but I do say that. I guess it's to the sound aspects of the names. In the Germanic language of English, if you were to translate Yahshua, it actually is Joshua and not Jesus at all. So when the interpolation was done, the closest thing the Greeks had was Ius, which means Zeus that saves, because that's what the concept of Jesus was supposed to be, a supreme deity, Zeus, that saves, brings salvation to people. So the transliteration to Isus was more about the concept than it was a direct translation of the name Joshua. Their language doesn't say Joshua. And if you want to see something similar to that in our world today, look at the Japanese language. If you, not the ones who've been born and raised here in America, got American accent, all that sort of thing, but when you talk to someone who's from Japan or other Asian countries, the W sound is not in their vocabulary. It's not in their language. So they struggle with that W sound when they're speaking English. So the Greeks struggle with the sh and the oh sound, and so they transliterated over to Isus. And then the Latins in the Valentinus, they just translated from the Greek, and then the English just translated from the Latin, well, Latin and Greek. So they never bothered to translate from the Aramaic, because the Aramaic translations of the New Testament were written after it was written in Koine Greek. So even the Aramaic translated from the Koine Greek. So that's why you have that issue. You say L and R also. You know what? I didn't think about that, but they do have a person. Some Asian countries do have a problem saying my first and last name the way that we would say it in English. All right, we are adding Ramesh. Ramesh.
Yeah, hi sir. This is Ramesh Gopi.
Hello, Ramesh.
Hi sir, this is Ramesh Gopi from India.
Yeah, from India. Nice to meet you.
Yes, sir. I've been hearing your messages. Recently, I subscribed, continually hearing. So I'm also like from the Christian background.
Okay.
From the past 30 years. So I'm also now fighting with Christians, and I mean not fighting. I'm trying to explain what is not in the Bible, how Jesus became Messiah. how they made. So some of them information I use from you, like how you said your explanation is very good. So it is helping me to learn some like to get
Okay.
knowledge. So actually, sorry, I'm from Telugu language. I don't know English break.
It's okay. I'm gonna work with you to try to understand what you're saying. But for
Mm,
thus far, what I understand, you are from India and you are a Christian,
yes, sir.
and you're learning. You're trying to
Mm,
learn more information that's not in the Bible.
mm.
Is that what you? Do I understand you correctly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is right.
Okay. So what's your question?
So, so how can you prove to that Jesus is not historical? Even though recently I have given interview, I told there is no historical evidence. I have seen your short video. You have said that we have Babylonian evidence, Greek Alexander, but Jesus we don't have. But here they claims like Jesus tomb and Jerusalem, Bethlehem. So these all are evidence they are claiming. So how can I answer them?
Okay. Ah, shit. So did you say that how people are claiming they do the comparison between Jesus and Alexander the Greek, and in that comparison, uh, they use the literary
Mm,
aspect of Alexander.
mm,
The fact that most of his biographies are at least 100 years to 400 years older than when he actually lived.
mm,
One of the
mm,
problems in that is that they're only using documentation in order to distinguish whether or not Alexander is a historical person or not. What they're
mm,
not using is the fact that there's pottery, statues, coinage, all showing Alexander, and the
mm,
fact of his conquest of all the way through to India um,
mm,
denotes that Alexander was the primary person who led those conquests. So
mm,
when they are just using documentation, they
mm,
want to draw those comparisons. Actually, I'm doing a video sometime this week about Tiberius in his
mm,
comparison to Jesus because it follows the same pattern where there's not a
mm,
lot of contemporary writings about Tiberius, but
mm,
we also have other evidence of Tiberius. Uh,
mm,
so when you're having those conversations, you have to distinguish, but you have to add to the conversation the fact that there's archaeological evidence that shows that Alexander was a real
mm.
person.
Yeah. Okay.
The other part is when they are claiming that there's documentation that proves that Jesus existed, that
Mm,
there's not one shred of documentation of the life of Jesus when he was supposedly alive. That
mm,
everything, if you're talking about Tacitus, you're talking
mm,
about writings that are 70 to 100 years after. Pliny
mm,
the elder, I mean the younger, way
mm,
after. You don't have anybody during the time of Jesus writing about the Jesus character. So
mm.
what you're really seeing is people writing about what other people believe, not
Mm.
what is actually real.
They are claiming they are quoting from the Josephus Flavius book, Antiquities. He wrote about Jesus. He is a historian. He is not a believer yet. He wrote about Jesus. So it is the evidence he lived.
Okay. So
Mm,
Joseph ben Matthias, who later becomes Joseph Flavianus, was a Jewish historian, true. He was a Jewish
mm,
historian who was born in 34 CE. So he would not
mm,
have been a contemporary of Jesus, but is writing after.
mhm,
Josephus writes about he writes about 3 to 4 different Jesuses that did different things that you can find in the Gospels. And
mm,
but these are 3 to 4 distinctively different people with different fathers, different families, they have different positions. Now, the main one they try to jump on is in his writings. There's another interpolation where he which they call it interpolation, is pretty much a forgery. And what they did was in the 4th century, they added the part in Josephus' writings that said, and then there was a man, and if you could call him a man who was a wanderer of great works, and Joseph calling him the Christ, that was added after the Council of Nicaea, most likely even in the 400s. So this was something that was added to it. And so if you research linguistic archaeologists on Josephus's writings about Jesus, you will see all the evidence that shows that the language structure is more 4th and 5th century language structure, and not 1st century language structure. You'll also learn that Josephus never converted to Christianity and was a devout Jew. And being a devout Jew, he would have never called Jesus the Christ, because his belief in 1st century and early 2nd century would have been that the Messiah has yet to come. But he was also a Hellenistic Jew. I mean, he had an apartment in Rome in Vespasian's house and Titus's house. So he was more Romanized than he was Christianized or even Jewish.
Right. Thank you, sir. And one final question, sir. So actually, I heard that your biography, from the childhood, you got that mind questioning.
You're muffled. You were very muffled right there. I couldn't understand nothing.
Actually, I heard about you in your video only, that you are saying from the childhood you are started questioning the Bible and deep studying about the Bible. So I heard from your video. So where did you get source from, to get doubts or get all these things about Christianity?
Oh, okay. So for people who didn't understand what Ramesh was saying, that he was remarking about the videos of when I said that I started questioning the Bible from a very young age. I was 9 years old when I first started questioning the Bible. And what sources was I using that created the doubt? The first source that I used to create doubt was the Bible itself. Most of the time people read the Bible, when they read it, they're either reading it straight through, or they're reading this little part and then they skip over to this other part. What most people don't do is compare different parts of the Bible that are supposed to be talking about the same thing and see if there are any differences in what they are saying. So when I started reading the Bible at 9, by the time I was 12, I was comparing different parts of the Bible. So I would read, how did Saul die? And in one version, he's killed one way. In another version, he's killed. Well, in one version, he's killed by one person. Another version, he's killed by another person. So why is there 2 different statements about Saul's death in the Old Testament? Then you start noticing that Luke and Matthew have different birth stories that don't match up, right? Then you start seeing, there's this war in heaven, but I cannot find a war in heaven in the Bible other than Revelations, but that's yet to come. So where did the war in heaven come from? That comes from the book of Enoch. So that's not in the Bible. And the reason why it's written so when was Enoch written? It wasn't written during the time frame of Enoch. It was written around 2nd century, 3rd century BCE. So this is after the Jewish people. Now they've been influenced by the Babylonians and the Greeks, who have a war in heaven story. So I started to see how these lines are connecting. Now, once I started, as I got older, then I started looking at what was in the libraries and different archaeological writers, different theological writers in the library, and different historians. And then I had the opportunity to travel. So, I went to Rome, went to Israel, went to Egypt, and then I get to see if these people's stories actually match up. And I start to see that there's no evidence of an Exodus and that the timelines don't fit. Because if you go by what Solomon said, what's written about Solomon in Kings, then the Exodus is supposedly happened in the 1500s BCE. Then you look at Egyptian history and you look at the Mediterranean history as well. Well, there was no big cataclysmic events that happened in the 1500s BCE, and Egypt actually thrived during the 1500s. And that the city of Pithom and Ramses was not built in the 1500s. They weren't built to the 1200s. So a combination, the doubt started by reading the Bible itself and comparing the Bible, actually studying it. And then it grew by understanding history of those people, of that Mediterranean history started showing me how these stories just don't fit with history and that none of it is historical. And of course, travel is always great when you can actually go and see the stuff for yourself. So that's pretty much how I got here. Did that answer your question? Ramesh?
Sir, am I audible? Hello?
Okay, we got you. So does that answer your question?
Sir, am I audible? Hello?
I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I just wanted to say thank you because your information is helping me a lot to learn about Bible, and I'm also telling to the people in India. So here is the people are Telugu language. So the Telugu language is in the Bible. There is lot of errors. Even if you compare with the English Bible, also lot of errors, lot of misquoting there are. So I started reading English Bible, so I'm learning something, and your videos also helping. So very simple. You tell like just speaking wherever you sit, you just talk. But good information.
All right, I
Thank you,
appreciate
Lord.
that. And
Thank you,
the
sir.
best Bible to use would be an RSV updated edition. I would not use
Okay.
the King James.
RSV or NRSV, sir?
Yeah, the RSV updated edition would be your Revised Standard updated edition would be the better one to use. Don't use the King James. The King James is one of the worst translations out there. And if you use a lexicon, use the Oxford lexicons. The Strong's is a terrible concordance to use because the Strong's is just really built to support the King James.
So how about BLB, sir? Blue Letter Bible? Because
Blue Letter is just there to support the Strong's. Yeah, Blue Letter is just designed to support Strong's.
Okay. So Oxford LXS.
Yeah, I would use the Oxford.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Nice to talk to you. I'm very happy.
It's my pleasure to talk to you too.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, have a good one. See, he's still Christian, but that was a good conversation. Not like that youngin that we had earlier. Which Bible? And try to learn from. Try and learn how the Bible. Right, learning how the Bibles came to be is a very important part before you acknowledge what Bible has authority and which ones don't. Plenty of history in the Bible. What history is in the Bible? So if Jesus was the Messiah, why are there multiple other people called the Messiah? Exactly. Because Jesus was not accepted as the Jewish Messiah. The only history that the Bible may have is, oh, Jerusalem exists. Okay. Sennacherib ran a conquest against Israel. Okay. Did 180,000 of Sennacherib's troops get killed by an angel? No. That doesn't work. So you have to denote what is historical in the Bible and what is not. And you cannot demonstrate any of the miracles are. And any royalty in the Bible that is earlier than Hezekiah, there's absolutely no proof of them being royal. Even when we have the Tel Dan Stela that says House of David on it, but it says the House of David and the seed was destroyed, that would mean that no one is of the seed of David because they were all destroyed. But the House of David doesn't indicate that it's royalty. Right now in America, you can say the House of Gates, the House of Musk. Powerful families also got the title of the House of. And if I wanted to, I can say that this is the House of Reed. So there's no history in the Bible that you can demonstrate prior to that. People groups, some people groups the Bible get right, others it don't. Conquest, it gets some things right, they'll get some things wrong. They claim they destroyed Jericho, but the walls of Jericho had already been down before Joshua would have ever gotten there. They claim to destroy the city of Ai, but the city of Ai had already been abandoned before the time frame that Joshua would have existed if you go by the biblical timeline. So they're making claims of things based on people writing it 1,000 years later, claiming that this happened because we know this city was destroyed and it was abandoned. So Joshua must have done it. So no, it doesn't work. Oh, sorry, that's the Mesha Stela. No, I thought that was the Tel Dan Stela that has the House of David. I thought the Mesha Stela is Mesha Stela is when King Mesha kicks Omri's ass and takes the sacrifices that were supposed to be given to Yahweh and gave them to his god Shamash. But then they flip it in the Bible to say that the only reason Mesha was able to win is because he sacrificed his son. So it's the Tel Dan. So yeah, that's the Mesha Stela is talking about that. The Tel Dan Stela it might be talking about King Mesha again, but that's not what that one is called. But let's make sure. I know a lot, but I've forgotten more than I actually know. Yeah, it's the Tel Dan Stela that talks about a House of David, but it doesn't confirm that there was a King David. Although you will have scholars that will say that it confirms a King David because the Bible calls him a King David. We have no evidence of a unified Israel at any time frame. But the House of David, and one of the problems with that is that the House of David, and that was an Armenian king who had said he had victories over the House of David and the kings of Israel. But the House of David on the Tel Dan Stela is in Judah, not in Israel. He places David in the House of David in Judah, not Israel. So yeah, it's the Tel Dan. The Mesha is about Israel being defeated by Mesha, by King Omri. Are Luke, Matthew, Mark, and John, are they eyewitnesses to Jesus' teaching? Absolutely not. They're not even mentioned by name until 180. Justin Martyr in 150 called it the wisdom of the apostles. And then Irenaeus in 180, 181 gave them the names. but they're not eyewitnesses to any of the events. And one of the things they have to have been, how can you eyewitness how people felt and what they were thinking in their inner mind? So refer back to the story of the woman with an issue of blood. This woman has an issue of blood. In her mind, she is saying, if I could only get Jesus. How does the writer know decades later, because they could not have interviewed this woman, know what was in her mind? How could they have known that? How could they have known the vision that Pontius Pilate's wife had? Right? Where were they? The disciples were asleep when Jesus supposedly was, talking to the devil. You see what I'm saying? You're not eyewitnesses to nothing. This is a novel. This is written in the same way if you sat down and wrote a sci-fi. As the novelist, you can say what a person is feeling and what a person is thinking. And you can say when people have private conversations. Like when you're watching a movie and you're telling somebody, don't go in there. You know that the villain is in there, but the person in the movie don't. The other character don't. So if you were an eyewitness, you can't write as if you already know certain things that's impossible for you to know. So these are certainly not eyewitness accounts. Just even in the structure that they're written, they're not eyewitness accounts. Say, yeah. Now I know a lot, but there's a hell of a lot more that I don't know. I agree with you on that one, 100%. Can you spell the city or the nation you say that sounds like AI? I don't know anything about them. No, it's AI. It's just spelled AI. This is the city that supposedly Joshua conquers Jericho. Then after Jericho, they go up without God's blessing to try to. Some people go up without God's blessing to try to conquer the city of Ai. They get defeated. They come back. Then God says, "Okay, now do it my way," and He goes and they conquer this city of Ai, and they utterly destroy them. They do some pretty good military tactics in that version of the story with distractions and misdirections. So militarily, I like the story, but then the problem is that the city had already been abandoned. It was already known to be abandoned during the time frame that Joshua would have existed if he did at all, which he didn't. But the city is just called Ai. And this is a good one that MC Time. I don't know if you mean it to be MC Time or McTime, but you MC Time. I said, if you do a Google search for the authors of the Gospels, it will hide the scholarly thought and evidence behind the traditional teachings and the more button. So if I were to ask it about who are the authors of the Bible, if you ask it straight out like that, what it's going to do is pull together the information that is most prominent on the internet, which is going to be the apologetic information. So oftentimes when I ask those questions, I may say, if I don't use Google Scholar, but I use Google, I'll ask the question more in the framework of what is the scholarly consensus of the authorship of the Bible. So I would ask it with ask the question, what is the scholarly consensus? That way it forces Google to go beyond just what the apologetics have said. So it would, what does Tony Robbins say? The quality of the question determines the quality of the answer. So that's why. And are they, the Gospels, inspired by God to write Gospels? Absolutely not. That was something that was written by a pseudographical writing of Paul. Paul didn't write it either. Whoever the author of Paul didn't write that either. But one of the people who were a follower of Paul, and I think it's in First Timothy, where he says that all scripture is God breathed. That is the first time that you get that, but that's a second century writing, the whole God breathed thing. So it is something that that was written once Christianity was becoming more established. But there is zero evidence that would indicate that it is somewhat God breathed. A Bible baby, I guess that was an accident that they wanted to come up. Oh, correct. Yes. Okay. MC Time. Yeah. Asking the question different way. Oh, Mac Time. Okay. So Mac Time. Got it. Mac Time. I like MC Time, but that's what you Mac Times. I got you. But yeah, you have to be able to when you ask these questions, it's not you have to make sure, one, you're not asking in a way that gives a bias. Right? You don't want a biased answer unless you're just trying to support your narrative. Then you ask a biased answer, a biased question. When you just want the answer, then you want it to be as non-biased as you possibly can. That's why sometimes I may even say, what is the non-apologetic scholarly consensus of this or that, so, and that's only when Google is really trying to force a bias on me. Then I may ask about the non-apologetic, because oftentimes I want it to give me both the apologetic and the non-apologetic answers. And sometimes the Google AI has actually gotten better at doing that as well. If you hit that AI mode, it's gotten better at being able to deliver to you more of a non-bias, a more detailed version of your question, I should say, that searches deeper into the internet. Thank you, sir. I thought Paul copied from Matthew, Luke, and John, and he added things. Paul may have heard, most likely the writer of Paul heard the stories when it was still just verbally being told, and seeing the belief of Christianity growing. The actual scrolls of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were most likely not written yet. So he would have just been hearing stories and hearing what people are believing, and kind of avoided getting into a narrative like those stories are, and just started preaching as an apostle of this newfound religion. Either that or Rome put him up to it. Hey, we need a diminished. And the reason why I say Rome put him up to it is because Vespasian and Titus, their mode of operation was not just go in and conquer the people and beat their ass, but to also take whatever the story is that's causing the people to revolt and either get rid of their story or change their story. This is what they did to the Druids. And because they did that to the Druids, this is why Nero asked Vespasian and Titus to come into Judea and shut down the Jewish revolts. And so since their mode of operation, and when you study military tactics, generals have a certain way that they like doing things, and they don't deviate from it that much. So when Vespasian becomes emperor of Rome, it is plausible that he would instruct Josephus or Philo to create to push this docile version of Christianity, and to use an agent like Paul would be right up their alley, to make them docile, to stop the Jewish revolts that was causing disruption in places like Alexandria, Egypt. And Alexandria was like a big money bank for the Roman Empire. So you can't mess up the money, But Paul didn't necessarily utilize any written versions of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but it is most likely that he heard the stories, though, if there was an actual individual named Paul. But yeah, I don't give a lot of credibility to this guy, Paul. I see Paul more of a John Smith creating his Mormonism. That's why you have the Pauline Christianity and you got your Jesus Christianity. And they have differences in how they roll. Paul is like, the world is coming to an end. Don't get married, and all you need is belief. All you have to have is faith. And Jesus is like, hey, the world gonna end, but you need to follow the law. Till heaven and earth passes away, you're supposed to follow this law. So I think AI is more slimy. I have a problem with mine using so much fluff to muddy the waters, kind of like a gish gallop. I don't know what a gish gallop is, but I understand what you're saying with the context clues of the rest of the sentence. I mean, AI is growing, is getting better. You do have to sift through some bullshit because web pages like, what is that main one? Oh, like what is it called? Answers in Genesis. They put so much information out that the internet, that an AI will naturally grab some of their information. So that's why you have to sift through it. That's why you have to go beyond it at times. That's why sometimes I'll use the AI mode. Oftentimes I go to Google Scholar when I have time to read, like a 14-page PhD paper on something. Then, I go to Google Scholar. But yeah, I'm more in line to agree with this aspect of Paul, that he was just a usurper and saw the Christian movement and say, hey, I can get famous. I can get some power. Because in the Roman Empire, influence over people is power. What they say in that movie Gladiator, he who controls the mob controls Rome. That has never changed. You look at how we are living today. I don't normally go political, but so just take this for as it is. Look at how people in America are responding to kidnapping. And yes, I say kidnapping, which tells you where I lean on this particular subject, but it's not because of why you think. But the kidnapping of Maduro, if you can control the people with your narrative and support that, you can keep doing it. If you can't control the people with your narrative, then you can't keep doing that. Now, before anybody get political on it, my whole thing is, you don't kidnap sovereign, people in sovereign countries. It's about international law for me. It's not about who's doing it. It wouldn't matter if it was a Democrat doing it or a Republican doing it. That's not what you do. You know how quickly the world can become disabled if countries just start snatching up the leaderships? No. Putin finna say, shit, why am I talking to this dude in Ukraine? I'm just snatch him up. China gonna be like, why is China talking to the leader of Taiwan? Let me just snatch his ass up. That's a horrible precedence to set. That's how you get World War III going, with some bullshit like that. Think about it. World War II started because somebody assassinated a world leader. I think 99% of the world leaders suck, but it's a necessary evil. So I think Paul was recognizing that, hey, if I can control a large group of people, that gives me power. If I control their mind, control how they function, how they act, what they believe, it gives me power. Joseph Smith did the same thing. Got him a whole goddamn state, Utah. After they kicked his ass out of he got kicked out of Pennsylvania and Ohio. So, Yeah, so now Paul was in based on my viewpoint of the information provided, Paul was trying to get power. And he got it. He got it until Rome said you ain't got it. When Rome said you ain't got it, he ain't having no more. Is it true that the true meaning of the Bible is esoteric? No, it's not. The Bible is not so much this esoteric book. The Bible started becoming more of an esoteric book in and around the late 1800s when you had esoteric movements that started. And because the Bible was the most popular religion to Western culture, they began to find esoteric meaning in the Bible. To the people who were in first century, second century, those were literal things that happened. That the meaning of the Bible was that you had to follow the law if you was following Jesus. You had to just have faith if you was following Paul, and that Jesus, all the things of Jesus happened the way he said it was happening. Revelations was going to happen the way it was going to happen. Like to them, there were going to be locusts, these locust things with armor on it, biting the shit out of people. Right now, if it was metaphorically talking about a tank or a helicopter, it ain't biting you, it's killing you. Right. And these people would get sick and all these sorts of things, and people are going to be sealed and all that. They meant that shit literally. The water was going to turn into blood. Third of the people going to die. So are there analogies? Yes. There's analogies in the Bible. Are there parables? Yes. But they took it literally. Right. Yeah, it is just as time goes on, it changes, and people change the meaning of it based on the culture that they're in. So, and because of whatever the culture, the mode of the culture that they were in, that's how they interpreted the Bible. Just like Africulture just said about there is no interpretation without injecting your own bias. I think that's how he said it. It scrolled up on me. Yeah, there's no interpretation without injecting your own ideas. And that you can see that throughout the history of Christianity, that individual ideas is what has molded this religion in concert with power and military. This is the whole reason you have Inquisition, the whole reason you have anti-Semitism, the whole reason you had slavery of foreign people is because of how someone interpreted this Bible. I don't know who Amon Hillman is, so I can't give an opinion on it. Y'all know I haven't read a book in over a decade. Not a book like that. I've reread some of the books I already have, but I'm sorry, I'm looking up at where the books are. Ooh, my curtain. The little magnet ain't working. Trying to make it look decent. But yeah, it's finding some, so I can't tell you who book to go read. The best thing I would say, if you have a question, go to Google Scholar and read the papers that people are submitting for their PhD, and then read the peer review of those as well. I appreciate that, Matt Times, even though I want to call you MC Time. Like, man, I ain't a DJ. Oh, man. Oh, he says in Greek, Christ is a drug. Oh, hell, I can agree with that. Religion. Who was it that said religion is the opium of the masses? that is probably one of the truest statements that have ever been uttered. That the first time that man, and it's happened multiple times, in my opinion, that man looked at nature and started to ask the question why. Well, we see that it's a sunny day and we see that it gets a little rain, fertility, you know, but why does the storm come? Why does storm lightning starts a forest fire and destroys everything? Why are these things happening? And when they start questioning why there are different things, why does the moon like changes this amount of light? They start creating ideas and lies. Uh, and I think it's Vietnam. I think it's the Vietnamese story where the moon is a goddess and the sun is her husband, and they got into a fight, and the sun was embarrassed about his bruises, so he shines bright. But the moon was like, "Nah, I'm gonna show the world that he beat me up." And so the moon shows his bruises. It's because people were like, "Why are there dark spots on the moon?" Oh, because her husband, the sun, beat her ass. You know, people started asking why, and that creates religion. And then they get deeper and deeper, and all of a sudden, it's their opium, it's their drug. My life is not going right because the devil is trying to lies. I mean, lies, steals, and destroys, and that's why I keep getting evicted. No, you can't. You don't make enough money for the places you live in, and you don't know how to manage your money. That's why you keep getting evicted. Oh, I keep ending up with relationships that go sour because you have a bad picker. You pick the wrong people. You don't know yourself well enough to be able to pick the right person. But you blame it on God or blame it on the devil, or I'm going through a season. God is testing me. If this guy was real, test me. He should have tested me with winning that $2 billion lottery. Test me with that. See how well I handle that. That's a test. You testing me with no damn trials and tribulations. Say Tracy Tallman. I'm saying that name wrong. Tallman's. I'll let y'all see the name because I'm butchering the shit out of it. But yeah, it's amazing me that people think that Jesus is real also. But it says Tracy Tallman. I just messing it up. I always struggle with when it's the TW name word. Nobody else want to talk to me today. I ain't seen y'all in months. Well, weeks. He said that John Allegro's book says Jesus was an animal mushroom. That he was a hallucinogenic mushroom. Let me tell you, y'all know you can meet some spiritual beings on a mushroom trip. And when you read, like when you study any religion, a lot of the ancient people in different religions, they utilize shrooms, peyote, all these different things in order to connect with the spirit. They have their whole process, I'm gonna give me some ayahuasca. So then first I gotta cleanse my body and drink this other shit to get all the toxins out my body so that the vessel is clean before I do this do this ayahuasca. And then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna meet God. Gonna meet God that way. Oh, that's a good one. Paul B said that Arleon B said that Paul is like Ray Kroc, which I love the movie. I love the movie. If you've never seen it, seen the movie Founder. It's a great movie. But Ray Kroc took what the McDonald's brothers created and stole it for his own and became the man who created McDonald's. Like, everybody know there's McDonald's, but it's Ray Kroc that made you know McDonald's, and it's Ray Kroc's vision of McDonald's that you have. It's not the McDonald's brothers' vision of McDonald's that we have today. It's Ray Kroc's vision, and it goes. I mean, he took it hook, line, and sinker to the point where he had McDonald's #1, and he considered himself the founder of McDonald's. It's a great story, and it's a great parallel to Paul. I'm with you on that one. Salam, but I'm no disrespect to the names. He says that to believe in Jesus, he says to believe in Jesus, peace be upon him, is real because the Quran says so. I'm not gonna think for myself. The Quran says it. I believe in the Quran because my parents raised me up that way, or I converted into it for whatever reason. So I'm going to believe it. That has about the same validity as someone saying that I believe that Krishna is real because the Vedics say so. It don't mean nothing. It means absolutely nothing when it comes to the reality of, does something, did they exist or not? Hell, the Quran says that Muhammad, and I'm not getting into a whole Muslim Quran thing because I don't know as much about it, but I do know it says that what's his name? Muhammad split the moon. I saw the moon last night. It's full moon right now. Don't think it's ever been split. And if it was split, we would see evidence of it being split. What was the old cartoon back in the day? It's not Conan the Barbarian. It's another somebody the Barbarian, and he had like a big dude that looked like Chewbacca, and he had a sorceress woman with him. Oh, I loved that cartoon as a kid. I know I'm going off beat, but I love that cartoon as a kid. I think it was in the 80s. Thundar the Barbarian. I'm dating the shit out of myself. Oh, okay. My man was right there with me. You right there with me. Stop funding them. Thundar the Barbarian. If you remember when it comes on, there's a comet that goes between Earth and the moon. Earth and the moon, and it cracks the moon. If the moon ever cracked, there will be evidence of the moon cracking. I wouldn't be surprised if that's where they got that idea. No, not the Thundercats. The moon didn't crack on the Thundercats, but Thundar the Barbarian. It was a great cartoon that didn't get its just due. It didn't. It was better than He-Man. Oh man, but yeah, Thundar the Barbarian. Wasn't it with the little astronaut cartoon? No, it didn't have any astronauts really in it, but it had the world of magic and magicians rose out of the new Earth, that was new civilizations of Earth. So it wasn't technologically advanced anymore. It was about magic, and he had this sword that was a lightning sword. And yes, indeed, Saturday Morning Gold. That was a good time in the childhood. Thundar the Barbarian. Man, you gonna make me go and watch a couple of episodes of Thundar. See, I'm telling you, because I don't spend my life doing this. I watch Thundar. Oh man. And this is very, thank you, McTime. When a Muslim tell you that a Muslim, yeah, and I've heard the Muslim reason that that Allah put it back together. That demonstrates a weak God scared of popular opinion, because if I split the moon in half, I would leave it like that. And he finished with, so everyone would know my power. What greater way to demonstrate than to leave it as is, so that there is proof that you are God? Now, of course, we would probably figure out scientifically that something happened on the moon, because there are earthquakes that happen on the moon. Well, moonquakes, they're not earthquakes, but moonquakes that happen on the moon all the time. So scientifically, it would be some other reason beyond this God. But if I was a God, I would do a demonstration that man just cannot deny, right? Because if I'm God, I know what every person needs in order to believe in me. And I just do the damn thing. Just do the damn thing. You know what I'm saying? You hear what I'm saying? Like, because, sometimes I get a Christian that ask me, like, well, what would cause you to believe in God? Well, the answer is, I don't know. And to be honest, but if this God is all knowing, this God would know what it would take for me to believe in him. So if he truly wanted me to believe in him, he would do the damn thing so that I would believe him. What up, Mellow Focus? Happy New Year to you. Even though the real New Year is in the spring. The spring equinox. That's the real New Year. But that's so, like, if I died, or when I die from this body, because you never truly die, there's no such thing as death. But my consciousness stay together. And if I meet some being who says that I am the God of the Bible, and you Lorenzo didn't believe in me, and my response is going to be, well, why the hell didn't you demonstrate yourself in the way that you knew I would believe, since you're supposed to be the all-knowing God? Are you truly all-knowing or not? Because if you're all-knowing, you should have known what I needed in order to believe in you. So you can't get mad at me for not believing in you if you didn't do your part. You didn't do your part, dude. So you go on and do what you're going to do with the rest of these people. But I'm going to go over here and do what I want to do. Since my conscience is together and now I'm in this higher state, shit, I'm creating my own universe. You get on somewhere. I don't even want to be a part of you. I'm going to take a little material from your universe and go over here and create my own universe, because I don't like you, because you stupid. So, I was telling this guy over the weekend, my hope is that there is some life after this. That's just my hope. Not a fact. I don't think there is. But this is my hope. Because if there is, hopefully there is some deity. And if that deity exists, I got questions. Are you got about the first question? If that joker say yes, he about to get cussed out. If you say no, then I'll be like, why you let that bullshit float in? What's going on with that? See, I'm gonna have problems with him no matter how the situation goes. We're gonna have some issues, because I'm like, dude, seriously, what's your master plan here? Letting all these people get killed and murdered over the belief in something that's not even real? Or letting all these people get murdered and killed over a belief that's bullshit? You allowing slavery, you allowing people to get SA'd, you allowing people to kill children. You killed a bunch of children. Like, what's your deal, buddy? Like, I understand you are also subject to the pettiness of jealousy, the pettiness of anger. You are subject to those as well, because you say so in your own book. And you let that run you. You're supposed to be the dude, and you let that run you. You're a pab. That's exactly what I'm going to call him. You're a straight up punk ass bitch. Straight pab. That'll be a great AI video. You know what? I got another one in mind, but I'm going to put that one in the docket. too. Yeah, I'm gonna put that in the docket. Do an AI video of me telling God about his bullshit. Uh, he's a child. He's a child of childish mentality. You should be so mature that you know everything that's supposed to happen or should happen, or how things would work to the greatest benefit of whatever you created. Um, that's like being a father. If you think about it, me as a father, I'm not perfect, definitely not. I'm not the perfect father. I've made mistakes, but there is no way you cannot say that everything I've done, said, towards my children, that I wasn't thinking I was doing the best thing for them. But at no time would I want them essayed. At no time would I want them murdered. At no time would I do the murdering. At no time would I do the essaying as a good father. At no time would I make my daughters feel like they are property. At no time will I let my kids be someone else's property, nor at no time would I encourage my kids to take someone else's property. Good fatherhood. This joker failed over and over again in the fatherhood department. You know, and for all those people who say that God is a woman, then she failing as a mother. She, either way, she's fucking up. If he's male and female, what is that? Hermaphrodite, they felon. They're felon. Do a video of me waving my hat around, healing people. Do a Benny Hinn video. At no time would you eat then like a side dish. I don't know if you're talking to me or somebody else on that, Kevin. Now, all y'all telling me to do these AI videos, you know you can make them too. Might be able to create you a little page there. Start getting some monetary advancements. You know, I encourage you guys to make pages and utilize tools to, to increase your finances. At no time will you eat them like a side. Oh, no, eat my kids. Right. Got you. All right. You got people eating their kids. Well, we probably. She said she's going to kill her baby too. And I'm going to punish y'all by making y'all so desolate that y'all going to be eating your kids. Y'all going to be eating all y'all kids. You bastards, because you don't want to worship me, right? Yeah, no, this guy is straight punk. He's a straight punk. I'm probably the worst person that this guy ever want to meet. But like, damn, I knew I should have made his ass. Yep. Not gonna happen. But back to the subject matter, I should say. There's absolutely no historical proof of this God or this Jesus character or this God. There's no historical proof of 90% of the people in the Bible that it mentions. Right? None of these jokers existed. And it really gets on my nerves when, and this is why I tell y'all, I said, don't agree with everything I say. Go do the research for yourself. Think for yourself. They like to say, oh, Bart Ehrman says that there was a historical Jesus. I don't give a damn. Bart Ehrman says there was a historical Jesus. If I ever have a conversation with Bart Ehrman, one of the questions I'm going to ask him is, dude, you know there wasn't no damn historical Jesus. Why you keep on saying that? Are you afraid? Is it fear that you want to give them a little bit? You scared to go full out on them? Like, what's making you still say there was a historical Jesus, an individual, one person? Because the oldest writing that you're going to have that mentions of Yeshua is Josephus's writings, and he talks about multiple Yeshuas. So why are you saying that there was a historical Jesus? There are multiples that then created the legend of the biblical Jesus. Like, I really want to ask Bart Ehrman that question. And many other scholars just like him will still say there's a historical Jesus. No, there's a historical narrative. There's a historical legend. But that history is based on multiple people. And said, got to get that paycheck. And that may be the reason. That may be the reason. But Jesus ain't never lived. Ain't never been this biblical Jesus. That joker has never existed. Never. It's like, it would be like you taking like during the civil rights movement, take a little bit of Martin, take a little bit of Malcolm, take a little bit of Stokey, take a little bit of like 4 or 5 people, and then you create the one individual, and you give them all these magic powers, right? That's Jesus. You got a movement that was happening, bunch of people fighting against the system. So I'm gonna take a little bit of them, and then you throw your little Angela Davis in there, walking around with him. You throw some other little people, you create you some other folk. You take some folks, make you a Jesse, and then you create a story of how this magical person is the one that brought about the Civil Rights Act, that gave voting rights to the people in America. And then, but they go to jail, but they also have guns. They do a bus boycott, but they also got Fruits of Islam type people. You combine a lot of that, and that's what Josephus did. He combined somebody took Josephus' work and combined them and make them a Jesus. Josephus might have done it himself, but they combine them. And you make you a good Jesus character, and you can make you a good character who brought about civil rights. Because otherwise, there's zero proof of this Jesus character. Now, I know there's some Christians on here. Oh, they over there fighting other people. I thought he was talking to me, but he talked to somebody else. Oh, hold on. Let's see. I might want to delve into this argument. Kevin Willis, what evidence do you have based on evolutionary theory? If you believe we came from monkeys, sure, that's not evolution. The evolutionary theory does not have man coming from monkeys. So first you might want to learn what the evolutionary theory is talk about the common ancestor, that you have branches of Homo sapiens and you have branches of the great apes and then branches of the monkeys. But humans didn't come from monkeys. So you might want to learn the evolutionary theory first before you make statements and claims. We did not come from monkeys. We are made in the image and likeness of God. Now that's just what your books say. Because according to the Aztecs and Mayans, we was made from corn and dirt by 2 brothers. The world was destroyed by a flood, and we are descendants from Noah's and his son. Actually, there's not enough water on the planet, underneath the planet, above the planet to be able to flood the planet. And at no time in our existence have the entire world been covered by water. So Noah's flood never happened. Plus, if Noah's flood happened, then there would not be life on Earth in any sense that we know life now, considering that Noah's flood would have happened in around 2500 BCE. So, yeah, no. Facts are facts. Now, if you believe nothing made everything, no, actually, it's the Christian belief that believes that out of nothing came everything, because it is Christian belief that says that there was only God, and then God created everything out of nothingness. The idea of the Big Bang is that there was already a material universe, and within that material universe, our known universe was then created out of the material that was already present. So therefore, the Big Bang theory does not postulate that out of nothing came the universe. It is Christianity and other religions that postulates that everything came out of nothingness. Your little theory might be true. Do more study. Yeah. I love when they try to determine what the non-biblical scientific thought processes are, and they truly demonstrate how they don't understand. Hey, Miss Fifi, how you doing? Thank you for the popular arrow. Thank you for the gift. But they don't understand exactly how those theories work. They don't know those theories, but sure as hell claim that that's what people like me believe. So no, so he got evolution wrong, he got the flood wrong, and he got the Big Bang Theory wrong. Since Ed Crunchy don't want to come on here, like I've invited Ed Crunchy to come on to the show, but instead he stays in the comments. He's in there today, I should say. Right. They just mess it up all the time, Debbie. They always talk about, oh, atheists believe that we all came from monkeys. That's what, no. It goes, there's a common ancestor. From that common ancestor, you have multiple branches, one Homo sapien, other great apes, then the baboons and the monkeys. But they are not connected in such a way that monkeys or great apes gave birth to man. It doesn't work that way. And this goes to, I forgot who asked the question earlier about, is the Bible esoteric? This is what people have started doing since the 1800s. The late 1800s is when people start saying, oh, no. It's all, none of it is supposed to be taken literally. It is all allegorical. No, it's not. Those people believe that shit happened literally. When they wrote it, they meant it to be literal. They were not trying to say, oh, the allegorical flood. No, they were writing based on previous flood events and previous flood stories. So they were writing based on what they believed to be a literal thing that happened. The Younger Dryas flood is probably what created the flood myths all around the world, but only in only in coastal areas. Other people who had floods were river floods, like the Chinese have a river floods. The Indians in Tennessee by Chattanooga, they had river floods. They didn't have worldwide floods, just river floods. So inland people have river floods. Coastal people had worldwide floods most likely because of the Younger Dryas reclaiming 400 feet of land. And they thought the world is ending. And most floods in the Mesopotamia were written before the biblical Noah's flood. So no, sir. No. They meant that shit literally. And Jesus they mean it literally, that this dude walked around healing people, walking on water, and that he is the Son of God. And really, you don't get Son of God-ish stuff until you get to the book of John, which wasn't written until at the earliest 90 CE. The consensus thought on Jesus of first century, of mid first century Christians, was that he was like a great prophet. He was divine, but not God. So even when he says, even when John writes, and see, it's because of people like John, when John writes that before Abraham, I am, early Christians would not, most of the early Christians would not have taken that as a Trinitarian thought. They would have taken that as a sign of divinity, but not a sign of Trinity. And the Jews some Jews may have taken it as him claiming himself to be God, but other Jews would have taken that as him claiming to be greater than Abraham, which that in itself is reason enough for them to pick up stones and try to kill him to claim that he's greater than Abraham. So no, they meant this shit literally. We, over the last 100 or so years, have started this idea of, oh, it's metaphorical and it's parables and it's allegories, and what they're really saying is that Adam is the atom, with the protons, neutrons, and electrons, because Adam is the proton, Eve is the neutron, and then the electrons are their children, and God split the atom, and that's what brought about light or some bullshit. You can start a whole new religion just without some of that bullshit like that. You can just roll that on up and people will follow that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Kevin said, Adam is Atum. That's right. He Atum from the Egyptians. All right. All right. There's nothing but bullshit. There's nothing about physics. The only thing about physics in the Bible is going to be the physics that they knew back then, and they knew very little physics back then. They thought that the sky, because it was blue, that's a dome that's holding back the waters, and that when it rains, God opens up a portal and the rain comes down, right? The cloud is just is right there where the window open. So it's a bunch of bullshit. All right, and they'll take a little bit of something. That would be like if I tell one allegory, then does that mean that everything I've taught my children is an allegory? If I tell one, parable, does that mean that everything I've taught my children is a parable? The way I've taught them to manage their money is not a parable at all. It's literally how they need to manage their money and how they do it, except for one of them. But that's how they do it. It wasn't a parable. It's how to do it. It's a literal. 70, 10, 10, 10. 70% goes into your necessities, 10% savings, 10% investment, 10% play. I don't mean that parabolically. I mean that shit literally. Have I told my children parables? I sure have. Have I told them allegories or used allegories? Yeah. But that doesn't mean everything I teach them is that. Jesus is called the cornerstone, and he died at 33. I don't even think the characters. When did he die? I mean, I'm not trying to jump on you, Chief, on that one, but I always find that interesting. When did he die? Because if he was born during the time frame of Herod, then there's no way at 33 he could have died in the year 33. But if he was born at the time frame of the census conducted by Quirinius, then he was born in 6 CE. So there's no way he died in the year 33, right? Like if he was born according to Luke, then he would have at 33, that would have been the year 39 that he would have died. So, but if he was born during the time frame Matthew is saying, which he was born when Herod was king, then he most likely is born around between 4 and 6 BCE. So let's just, split the baby and say he was born in 5, right? So then that means that he would have died in the year 28, 27, 28, depending upon when his birthday was, to which nobody knows his birthday. So when did he die? He damn sure didn't die in 33, because there's no mathematical equation. Well, you can force it with Herod no, you can't even force it with Herod. There's no way. There's absolutely no way this Joker could have died in 33 CE and be 33. That's impossible math. And the fact that he's supposed to be God, how can, like Miss Fifi said, how can he die? God can't die. If you're God, death is something that cannot happen to you. If we don't die, because your consciousness is energy, your body is energy, everything about you is energy. Energy doesn't die, cannot be destroyed. Just transmute from one form to the next form. So, did he die? No. Did the body cease to contain the consciousness? Okay. That's what we call death. So he transmuted to a whole nother form that happened to look just like him, that happened to have holes in his hands. So really, when Jesus came back to talk to his disciples, he was a zombie. If you think about it, he was a zombie. Because he still had the holes in his hand that Thomas was able to dip his finger in. So he's a zombie. He brought back a body that had previously lost what we would call life. We call those zombies. And then he resurrected about 500 more zombies, according to Matthew. Of course, no one else saw the zombies. So for this eyewitnesses accounting, how is it that Mark, and because it's Matthew, I think it's Matthew with the 500 zombies. Or no, 500 is the eyewitnesses that Paul claims. I don't think it says the number of zombies that was actually walking around Jerusalem that day. But if there were eyewitness account, where's the zombies in the other gospels? Where's the Romans talking about this zombie war that they fought? Because certainly Romans would have fought them damn zombies. Romans would have fought some damn zombies. So where's the zombie? Where's World War Z of Rome? And none of the right, and they would have recorded the event. I read that and fell out. They certainly would have recorded it. You would have had the writers of that day would have Philo, since he was a Jewish historian, would have wrote that, hey, over in Jerusalem, the zombie attack. The cause of the zombie attack is because a man died named Jesus or Yeshua, and he rose back up as a zombie. He bit his 12 people, and they all became zombies. Then a zombie apocalypse started happening in Jerusalem. But then the Romans came in and sealed them off and killed all the zombies. Like Philo had an opportunity to write him a novel. Y'all come in real fast on me over here. He wants us to eat his flesh and drink his blood. That's how you become a zombie. Getting the essence of them zombies in your body. How long was Jesus in jail for the Jewish hearings? I'm not sure exactly, and tried by the Romans. I'm not exactly sure. I think it is overnight. Like I think each one was like overnight or something like that. Then he said, word of Jesus would have spread like wildfire. People by the thousands would have ran to see him. Yeah, if he was all that he said he was, and he had thousands of people who was coming and listening to him, there would have been riots concerning this Jesus. And I think the next revolt happens like the next revolt happens, like 30, 40 years later. That they got busy and forgot to write it down. Now, this is a good one. He said that Africulture said, I think Jesus would have been illiterate in Imperial Aramaic, why couldn't he write? Would have been literate in empirical Aramaic. Why couldn't he have written his own story? And that's exactly true. It's unlikely that he would have been able to write in Koine Greek, but he definitely should have been able, since he was the son of a stonemason, then he should have been able to write in Imperial Aramaic and could have written his own story. And then that would have shut down all the bullshit if he'd have wrote his own story, right? So, but he didn't write his own story. He wrote nothing. And the main reason he wrote nothing because he wasn't one individual person. No. Oh my gosh. All right. So George wasn't here for my earlier comment about writing these long ass diatribes that I don't read because I ain't got time for all that. I got too many other people. You can't even click on the ... Question of the historical proof of Jesus. Jesus is the topic of extensive scholarly study and debate. Here's a summary of the. Oh, you know, I went to Google and grabbed some shit. That's fine though. I don't have a problem with that. Here's a summary of the current understanding based on the historical text. Textual evidence, historical evidence of Jesus Christ as the primary source. The main source about Jesus is the New Testament. They are religious texts written within the few decades, not necessarily true. Most of them are written multiple decades later after Jesus' death, blending theological aims and historical elements. Let me see something here. I can, because you went and copied and pasted, which is fine. Copy paste, don't mind. Let's see if I can. See, that's the problem. I don't know how you ask the question, so I don't know if I can get the same thing to see how your thing goes. Yeah, that was a copy paste, but I don't know how you asked that question, so you might have asked it the same way. Because I'm curious as to what it says at the end of all of that. Because the thing about it is, do your research. I don't think so. I don't think you've done any research because if all you did was just go and copy and paste what you saw on Google, then that's not necessarily research. Google is a great source, not denying that at all. But in order to say that this is proof of Jesus, just what you posted is certainly not enough. And I know what you pasted is a hell of a lot more, but StreamYard won't allow it to show up. It only allows so many characters. But I'm wondering, does it go in? What's the historical elements? The theological elements don't count as far as proof there, George. So what is your historical elements? What does it say as far as the historical elements that is saying there is a historical Jesus? Because it is most likely that the historical elements are going to be people like Suetonius and Tacitus, Pliny the Younger. It's going to be people like that. And those people are merely just stating what someone believed. They're not stating with any empirical fact that this actual Jesus person was walking, talking, and doing the miracles that are claimed. So you have to do better, sir. You have to do better because you are the one that believes in this Jesus character, not me. So the mere fact that there's 0 contemporaries who write about Jesus, and the contemporaries who were around during the time frame of Jesus, none of them wrote about Jesus, especially the ones that definitely would have if he was walking around talking. But there's 0. One of the main person who would have said something about this Jesus character performing miracles and doing all the shit that he was doing in Judea should have been Pontius Pilate. Because he was the one, he would have seen, Jesus would have, although they portrayed Jesus in the Bible as well, they portrayed the Sanhedrin as being the people with the great being who felt the greatest threat from the Jesus movement. It literally would have been Pontius Pilate who would have had the greatest threat from the Jesus movement, right? And the mere fact that that this man was supposed to be creating such a big movement, but Pontius Pilate don't say shit about him, doesn't request reinforcements, don't go out and purposely try to shut down his movement. When in first century, Nero, from the time frame of Augustus Caesar to Nero, they were definitely had a hard on for shutting down Jewish revolts. And yet during that whole first century time frame that Jesus was supposed to be walking and talking and having thousands of people, coming to his meetups, the Romans did nothing. Come on, man. You have no evidence of Jesus. You have none. None. And you like to go onto my page on my videos and write these long ass stories. That's all you're doing is regurgitating what you found without, I don't think you actually understand it yourself. You're worshiping this copycat God. Oh my God, dude. See, this is the other part. They avoid the question. No, I've had this hat for a while. I've worn it in many videos, Miss Fifi. One of their tactics is always to try to go off into a whole nother question. So the question is there any proof of a historical biblical Jesus? That's the question. So do you know who the Sanhedrin, the Sadducees were? What they got to do with the question? What do they got to do with the question? Ain't got shit to do with the question. Nothing to do with the question. I have actually never seen a U.S. history book that includes Jesus as a historical character. The history books where I grew up didn't have that. That's interesting. If you had that in your history books, that's interesting. And this is ridiculous to me. This is why I'm putting this one up here. Maxie is saying that faith is not an academic opinion. It is trust. You are the one trying to make an academic / historical claim, so you should provide the evidence to support your view. Otherwise, what is it based on? It is based on the fact. Well, one, faith. Faith is believing in something without any proof of that existence. So I can have faith that unicorns exist. I can have faith that trolls exist. I can have faith that ogres and cyclops exist. Faith is just believing in something because you want to believe in it. Faith is believing in Santa Claus. That he comes down and he goes through people's chimneys and all that kind of shit and shows up. Faith is just believing in something because you choose to. Faith is not having any proof of anything. And anybody can have faith in any damn thing they want to have faith in. But historical evidence, if you want to know something and something is known, then you got to have academic historical facts that back up what you know. Otherwise, you just have faith. You can have faith that you're going to win the lottery. You can have faith that your business is going to thrive. You can have all the faith in the world. My business is going to thrive. I got the faith that my relationship is going to be great. But when it comes down to the hard knocks of things, your business doesn't thrive unless you know how to do business and you know how to market, you know how to have customer service, you know how to manage your money, you know how to figure out what EBITDA is, and utilize EBITDA. You have to be able to figure out all these different things and put them into practice and then see results in order for it to become a factual thing. So believing in a Jesus just because your grandma, mama, or whoever else told you about it, or you just read a book and you just believe in it, I can do the same thing and believe in Harry Potter. But if I wanted to know Harry Potter, I got to find facts and evidence that Harry Potter actually existed. And there's zero evidence that Jesus existed, just that people believed in him. So until you can provide evidence, or evidence is provided, Jesus didn't exist. Not the biblical version. That Joker didn't exist. And it is based, and the people who are making the faith claim, it is up to them to prove it if you want people to know it. But if you want people to just have faith in it, then yeah, people can just have faith in any goddamn thing. This is a dumb question. And y'all keep asking this question. It's stupid. Do you have proof that Jesus didn't exist? But I bet you won't bring this up. Think about that. Do you have proof that he didn't exist? That's almost a nonsensical question. Almost. It has a little bit of validity to it, but it's mostly a nonsensical question. That's like asking, do you have proof that the Tooth Fairy don't exist? Well, if something don't exist, you're not going to have proof of its existence. Okay? But what we do have proof is that people believed in a story. People believe that this Jesus existed. Just like in today's world, people they write headlines. And just by merely reading the headlines, people will believe that this thing is what's happening, or this is the why of something. And then it turns out to be false. We're going to go to Iraq because we want to get rid of those weapons of mass destruction that we know he has. And then we get over there and find out that he didn't have any. And people like myself was over there like, this was some bullshit. They got us over here for nothing. They got us over here because they wanted that man's stuff. They wanted that man's stuff. Yeah, I made the comment about Sadducees, but you didn't understand it in the context by which I made the comment. Jesus was a threat to all the different Jewish factions. He was a threat to them, but he was a bigger threat to the Romans. So him being a bigger threat to the Romans, who had power and control over Judea, you would think, since Pilate was an asshole of a person killing people at the slightest hand of disrespect to the Roman law and rule, then you would think that Pilate would have most certainly wrote about him. So understand the statement before you go off and ask a question. You know, the easier thing is just for you to come up on the line, because all this text warrior shit, I gotta go to the bottom. Too many people have been writing stuff. By the time I catch up, y'all be on a whole new subject. I would have missed it. But yes, faith is an excuse that people use. It's just what people use. And then name calling is their next thing. You guys are charlatans. No, the charlatan is the one that's taking your money, a tenth of your money every goddamn week. That's the charlatan. The charlatan is one that's giving you a fake promise of a heaven after this earth, where you will be mind wiped so that you can't know that people are in hell suffering forever, so that you can be have peace in this place with God. That's the charlatan. You are a charlatan upon yourself by lying to yourself, thinking that this is your God. This is a God of a small little group of people out of the Middle East that utilized the Roman war machine to conquer and take over the religion of people throughout the Mediterranean, and then through Europe, and then through a large portion of the world. That's the charlatan. And you still believe it. Knowing that that's the history of it, you still believe it. Let's see. The New Testament says he was a carpenter, which isn't too far from masonry. Is to construction. It is unlikely that he was a wood mason, a wood carpenter, because of the lack of trees in that region. But stonework was the primary work of building and construction in that time frame. So it's most likely he was a stonemason. But then the anti-Masonic parties got big, and then that's why it changed from stonemason to carpenter. in most Bibles after around the late 1800s. You can still find some early 1900 Bibles that says stonemason. Yeah, but these people are amazing. Ah, but Pilate said he found no fault with Jesus. So from Pilate's perspective, Jesus wasn't a threat, according to the Bible. According to the Bible. But according to what we actually know about the personality of Pilate, uh, Pilate was being brought back to Rome because he was being too vicious in his killing and handling of the Jewish people. So this version of Pilate that you see in the Bible is a Romanized version of him to make the Romans look like the hero. You see, the Jesus movement wasn't going to work with the Greeks and the Romans if the Romans were the villains. So it was written in a way that it made the Romans look like they're not the villains. Hard, heavy hand, but justifiable is how you write Roman stories in order for them to receive those stories. But Pilate was being called up by the emperor because he was being too harsh, and the emperor was going to kill his ass. Now, the emperor wound up dying before he got there. But later on, Pilate is still held as a criminal and is killed because he was too damn vicious towards the people. So, claiming what the Bible says about Pilate does not account for the reality of how the Romans viewed Pilate. And this is the Romans, they viewed Pilate as being too damn vicious. So you think all of a sudden he was soft on Jesus? Come on, man. Critically think. See, if you only read the biblical version of Pilate, then you think that Pilate was like, oh, this guy, he's a nice guy. I see no wrong with him. Why are these people so upset? Sure, he claims to be greater than Abraham. Whatever. He's a nice guy. He's peaceful. Unlike you other Jews who are out there trying to start a revolt. This is a great guy. Come on in, Jesus. Come on in. Hey, my wife has a vision about you. You're a great guy. No. Rome was like, Pilate doing too goddamn much in Judea. And he probably was part of the reason why he's doing so much that's one of the reasons why they keep on revolting. And every time they have Passover, it's always a damn fight because Pilate is being too damn cruel to the people. So the emperor was like, bring his ass up here. I'm going to kick his ass. Then the emperor died. But then the Senate was still like, nah, Pilate, you got to go. Because you part of the problem. You might want to learn a little history before you start quoting what the Bible says about Pilate. You see, that's where the lack of critical thinking comes into it. Just like you're not using your brain because you got to make sure you got to have the confirmation bias of your religion so that you can feel good about yourself. Y'all know they don't be they just read the little thing. Chief said that his history book said that Pilate was a sadistic masochist. Wow. You know, my history books didn't have shit about Jesus, Pilate. Like Pilate wasn't part of when we went through the Roman Empire, even in AP history, AP world history, we didn't when we talked about the Roman Empire, we didn't cover that. Yeah, according to some Roman historians, yeah, Pilate was wilding. Pilate was tripping. Pilate was like, I'm killing all these motherfuckers. Coming up here raising up against Rome. I ain't going for this bullshit. I'm a prefect, but I'm trying to rise up, trying to get to the Roman Senate. Yeah, these guys, they like to come on here and talk shit, but they sure want to stay behind that keyboard. Do you know how many archaeological discoveries support and validate biblical accounts? Name it. Name it. Name it. Name it, and let's go through it. See, that's another thing that shows to me that a person really doesn't know what they're talking about when they just say, "Oh, you know, there are archaeological things that show that Jesus was real," but they don't name the thing. You got to name the thing. No, you got to name it. Yes, you. Now, I don't know about you're a historian. What are your credentials as a historian? Like, do you have a PhD? Do you have a master's degree? Do you have a bachelor's degree? What school did you go to obtain that for the stuff that you copied and pasted on here? But yes, the word tecton in Greek, which usually referred to a carpenter in English, but the word tecton is actually broader than just woodwork. It can mean craftsman, builder, artisan, someone skilled in working with wood, stone, or other building materials. Yes, that's perfectly fine. Then you look at the territory by which a person was working in. I don't know if you've ever been to Israel or not, but Israel is not a great place for lumber and wood usage. In ancient history and all the buildings that we ever find that were built, even in first century, 99% of all buildings were constructed with stone. So when you go to the houses, when you go to the churches or you go to the houses or the ancient temples, it's 99% stonework. So it is most likely that he was a stonemason, which is not a big deal. It doesn't matter that Joseph was a stonemason or a woodworker. He probably knew how to utilize a little bit of woodwork. But that's not a major deal. So I asked George about his credentials, trying to see where he said them. He did not say them, but instead he was going to ask me a question. Where did you study history? High school? Well, almost everybody who lived in any Western country did study some history in high school. So that would be a part of the studying of history. Yes. Did I study history in the short time frame that I was in college? Yes, I studied history in college. Did I study history by studying with David Hasid, who was a curator at the Tel Aviv Museum? Yeah, with John Anthony West, who was a Egyptologist. Yeah, I studied with him too. Is my studying traditional? No. But see, I don't mind admitting that. There's no problem with that. And I wouldn't have a problem with yours either. It's just that you claim to be a historian. I don't claim to be a historian. That's the difference. I would never sit here and say that I am a historian. No. I study history, but I am not a historian. See, but you claim to be a historian, which is why I asked for your credentials. I don't claim to be a historian because I am unwilling to submit to the fact that I got to follow the narrative of some school program. Just like I refused seminary scholarships because they make you sign that statement that says that no matter what you learn, you're going to defend the faith. No, I'm not doing that. And if that means I can't go to your school or you won't give me the scholarship, then fine. I don't need the damn scholarship for me to just become an automaton and just regurgitate the same bullshit information that you give me. But, oh, he finally said something. I didn't see it. Wait a minute. Let me make sure he didn't say something else first. No, I didn't see it. So my man here said archaeological discoveries. So now he said that there are archaeological discoveries, a bunch of archaeological discoveries that talk about that validates the Bible. Well, the Meneptah Stela does not validate the Bible. What the Meneptah Stela validates is that in and around 1204, that there was a nomadic tribe of people who called themselves Israelites that were in the Levant in Canaan, and Meneptah, Pharaoh Meneptah, whooped their ass. Now, there is nowhere in the Bible does it talk about Pharaoh Meneptah whooping their ass. So there's no biblical account of Pharaoh Meneptah in around 1204 whooping that ass, but the Meneptah Stela says that Meneptah came and whooped that ass. Now, let's go a little further. In around 1200, in the late 1200s, early 1100s, what was the status of the Levant? The Levant was controlled by Egypt. There were revolts, yes. There were people acting out, yes. And that's why Meneptah came and kicked a whole bunch of their assets. Now, the people who were called Israelites were determined to be a people group by Meneptah. They were not determined to be a city, state, or a nation. But according to the Bible, whether you are looking at it from the fact that Joshua should have been in and around the 1500s, or Joshua is in around the 1200s, based on when they say they built Ramses and Pithom. But no matter how you look at that time, Joshua should have been, and the Israelites should have been in control of what we call Israel. So they would have been a city-state, a nation. But Meneptah says that they weren't, and that he whooped a nomadic group of people's ass in around 1200. So that does not validate the Bible at all. It actually goes against the Bible, suggesting that they were still just a nomadic group in that time frame, and not no 2 million people group either. So the Meneptah Stela does not support the Bible at all. The only aspect of it that supports the Bible from the Meneptah Stela is that there was a group of people called Israelites in the late 1200s, and that's fine. But that doesn't prove the Bible. That just proves that there's some people existed. That's it. You got another one you want to throw out there, buddy? Since you called me, said that I'm lost, seems like you might be a little bit lost on the information there. And I clicked the wrong button. See, one of the problems that people have is that they go and they say, oh, Meneptah Stela proves that Israelites existed in 1200, so therefore Israel, the Bible is true. No, what is the Meneptah Stela teaching you? What is it demonstrating? Is it demonstrating the Bible being true? It doesn't. I need a whiteboard and a map to point out when, where. Well, you know, the whiteboard used to be behind me, but this new office setup, it ain't going. The whiteboard can't be behind me. So I had to have some pictures of my ladies and their cigars. And she put a dude right there. Yeah, dude. I got my other lady. She right there. But yeah, so you want to be able to break down those things. Now, Max, before we go to the next one, Max must still have spiritual peace. Yeah, I see that. Why can't y'all say anything about? He said the Meneptah Stela. Where's your defense? Where's your defense of that? Where's your defense? You trying to move on? That's the other thing that they do. Once something they put out there gets, and I'm gonna say it the way I want to say it, gets freaking demolished as far as their proof of the Bible, then they want to jump to something else. Where is your defense of your Meneptah Stela that you just threw out there without having actually demonstrating that you didn't have knowledge about the Meneptah Stela and what it really means in history and what archaeologists look at it? Where's your defense of that Meneptah Stela comment that you made? Don't try to jump to the next bullshit. Don't. Let's not do that. Don't try to jump to the next one. Stay in your lane, buddy. You brought up the Meneptah Stela because if we was having a conversation, I wouldn't let you. If you was talking, if you was bold enough to come onto the live, I wouldn't let you just get away with, oh, well, what about the Joshua altar? Nah, we got to handle this Meneptah Stela. We got to talk about that. You know, I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Cause we ain't talking about. They ain't going on to the next one. Yeah. Defend your statement, sir. Defend your statement. That's what I want. I ain't seeing no defense of that statement. I still ain't seeing no defense of that statement. I'm ignoring your whole thing about your little Joshua thing. Nah, I asked you, but you got to defend that statement. How do you think a debate works? You just say some shit and just move on to the next shit. If you wanted to talk about, see, what you should have done was talk about the Joshua altar first, and not even bring up, and not even bring up the Menephtah Stela. You would have had a stronger case with the Joshua altar, right? Which the Joshua altar doesn't prove the Bible, right? Because basically what you have is you have two uncut stones that were utilized as an altar on Mount Ebal. I'm probably saying the name wrong. And this is based on a ceremony that supposedly happened in the Bible. Okay, so, but there is still much debate about if this altar is dated for the correct time. Some scholars say that it is. Some scholars say that it's not. Right. So there's still debate concerning it. Now, if it is, then all this proves is that some Israelites or some people who worship Yahweh at that time frame, because you got to understand, Yahweh has been worshipped far longer than Israelites have ever existed. So some Yahwistic people did create a stone, a altar on this mount. But who was it? Could have been the Shashu people who did it. They worship Yahweh. It could have been Canaanites. There were certain other Canaanite groups that worship Yahweh as well, because Yahweh was a storm deity to them. So, but it could have been the Israelites, the people who would be Israelites. It's possible. Does that prove that they were slaves in Egypt? No. Does that prove that any of those things? No, doesn't prove that. So I can agree with you that from at least 1200 there were Israelites, but there's no proof of Israelites before the 1200s. Now, in order for them to be around by the 1200s, I'll give you that they might have been 1250, 1280, some of those time frames, but not too much. I ain't gonna give you 300 years plus. No, we're not doing that. We're not going that route. I'm not putting it in that they weren't, or but around that time frame, if they existed during that 1200, which is the 13th century BCE, sure. But that just means they could have existed. That's it. And let me see something real quick. I just want to see where that's at in the Bible, just to make sure I'm thinking about the right time frame. And yeah, that's 13. That's Joshua. So that would put it in. See that? It's problematic though. This is the problem with your Mount Elba thing. And I'm trying to give you a little bit of a win here. what time frame do you say Joshua existed? That's a very important part of the puzzle, Maxie. It doesn't matter how covenant. I don't know what you're talking about. Because when you look at historical things that try to prove, according to the Bible, according to the Bible. So before you answer the question, Maxie, about when you think Joshua existed, of course, Joshua is there 40 years after going around in Sinai Peninsula area, right? For the most part. According to, I think it's Second Kings, First Kings or Second Kings, but I think it's Second Kings chapter 6. Based on what is said about Solomon's rule in the fourth year was 480 years before the Exodus. So that places the Exodus in and around 1550, somewhere around in there. That would mean that it is in the 1500s that Joshua crossed over into Jericho. But if the Israelites built the city of Pithom and Pi-Ramsey, which didn't come into existence until the 1200s during the reign of Ramses II in around 1289, somewhere around in there, 1270, then so you see there's like almost a 200-year difference. Now, the Joshua altar, most dated around the 13th century, will put it in the 1200s BCE. So if you based on Second Kings or First Kings, whichever one it is, if it's 1500s, then it can't date to the 1200s. It has to date to the 1500s in order for it to truly be Joshua's altar. Now, if you say that it is during the time frame of Ramses II, then your dating would be correct. But then that would make where it says in Second Kings or First Kings about the year of the Exodus in the Bible, it will make that one wrong. Hence the contradiction between the two stories. So which time frame do you say that Joshua was doing it, did the damn thing? Because otherwise, you have to admit that then there is a contradiction in the Bible of when Joshua actually lived. And I don't know if Ramesh is still listening, but Ramesh, these are the type of comparisons that makes you realize that the Bible is, one, not a historical book, two, that the Bible cannot be true. Because this is not two truths existing at the same time. And okay, first, Maxie, you're not a chump. Okay, don't call yourself a chump. Don't do that, man. Don't call yourself a chump. But so I'm gonna read this the way I want to. Then I'm an average bro. But believe me, there are actual archaeologists and historians that know about this stuff. I don't pretend to be an expert. I don't pretend to be an expert either, but what I have also done is go and I read the experts. I read and I studied the experts, and then I use my own critical thinking. And if you critically think through this, what time frame, based just solely on your Bible, would the Joshua altar have been put in place? It's either going to happen in the 1500s or the 1200s. It can't happen in both times, but the Bible is indicating that the Exodus happened in the 1500s and the 1200s. It has to pick one. One has to be right and one has to be wrong. And if one is right and one is wrong, then therein lies the contradiction in the Bible. So you have to pick one. But you're going to have to see the contradiction. It doesn't take an expert in archaeology to know that. But then the archaeologists are saying that most of them are saying that it's 1300. It's 13th century, 13th century BCE, which places it around the 1200s, would then make the statement about Solomon a contradiction to the Bible. It will make it a contradiction. You see what I'm saying? So you got to choose. But no matter what you choose, there's a contradiction within the choice. And yes, you're right, my guy. The Egyptians dominated the Levant during that entire time frame. The Egyptians didn't lose control over the Levant until around the late 1100s, late 1100s, early 1000 BCE, and we have evidence of this, of their war against the Sea People. And then the Bronze Age collapse is the primary reason why everything went to hell in a handbasket for the majority of civilizations in the Mediterranean during that time frame. Still not exactly sure what caused the Bronze Age collapse, but it is after the Bronze Age collapse that these smaller groups were able to establish themselves, and it was basically the Wild West out there, during that time frame. But you have Egyptian control all the way up to the Bronze Age collapse. So there's no way that, even if the Exodus was in the 1200s or it was in the 1500s, there's absolutely no way that there was this Joshua and the people conquered the Levant during the time frames that they could have been in, because Egypt still controlled the Levant during that time frame that the Bible claims, if you take either claim, that they did the thing. But they didn't, so they could not have. And so when you say, what is your proof? That is the proof that we know the Egyptians controlled that area. Whether we're looking at the Amarna letters or we're looking at the Merneptah Stela, we're looking at the reign of Thutmose III and so on and so forth. We look at these reigns and we see how they were thriving during Thutmose III time frame, during Serenmut's time frame. They were thriving. There's no way you have these 10 apocalyptic things happening and they still thrive. And we see the evidence of these things, so we know then that the Exodus never happened. We know that they were still in control of the Levant. They had puppet states, but as well, but we know they were in control of the Levant and some of the Mesopotamia with the puppet states. But because of that, we know that they weren't running shit. That there's no way that Joshua could have conquered those lands and genocided most of the people and enslaved the other people. That could not have happened, because then that would have mean they would have did it within the Egyptian empire, and the Egyptians didn't do nothing about it. It don't work. And it wasn't until the Sea People came down who then removed the Egyptians out of the Levant, where they lost control of the Levant. That's why we know this story is not historical. So you're not a chump. Don't do that. We all have been indoctrinated into certain things. But it is when we start critically thinking through the information that is provided compared to the information that is out there, all other information, and critically think through it, that's when we start to stand on our own feet. Right. And that's another aspect of it. One of the reasons why we know that the Egyptians were still in control of the Levant during those time frames is that we found that there were still many Egyptian relics throughout the Levant during the time frame that they supposedly Joshua was conquering the shit out of the people. But yet Yahweh supposedly defeated Ra. And even though most people don't think about it, if you had the Nile turn to blood and all the waters of Egypt turn to blood, you got locusts, you got all the cattle. These are agrarian people. But if all the livestock of Egypt is killed twice, if all the livestock is killed, the Mediterranean would have went into a huge depression. A financial depression would have been seen throughout the Mediterranean if all that shit had happened. See, what biblical people should be saying, they should be trying to figure out, how can I get the Exodus to have occurred around 1000, in the 1000s, because that's when the Bronze Age collapse happened. And if all that shit had happened to Egypt, then that would cause a collapse of society around the Mediterranean, right? And then it would say, yeah, well, that collapse happened because, you know, God messed up Egypt. And once Egypt got messed up, and it was the breadbasket and major trading point center for the entire Mediterranean societies, then uh, God's destruction of Egypt is what caused the Bronze Age collapse. And therefore, we see in history the Bronze Age collapse happen. And then, you know, the Israelites grew up out of that. And that's when the Egyptian kingdom started in around the 900s. See, you'd have something. You had something. But you don't, because that's not when the Bible says this shit happened. The Bible says that they took over at best 500 years prior. At worst, 300 years prior. Well, yeah, about 200 years prior. 200 to 300 years prior. So it just don't work. It just don't work. Yeah. Yeah. So next, you got some other archaeological proof? Oh, this is dude, don't use this talking point. This talking point is so weak. So you would record your own beatings while it's taking place so that there is an historical record of it. Yeah, I got some historical records of the bankruptcy I filed back in when I filed bankruptcy once, I know I filed bankruptcy once. I think it was like, I don't remember when it was, but it was way back when. Yes, people do record their failures. America has recorded its failure in Korea. The French record their failure in Haiti. The Romans record many of their failures. And even though what they try to do is only talk about what you see on the walls of Egypt, but Egypt does record some of its failures. Egypt records when the Hyksos conquered, and it's not a conquering in the sense that most people think it was a conquering. First, it was a high migration of Semitic people, and the Semitic people were multiple Semitic groups. But the Hyksos didn't just come in and conquer in the way that people think of like a nation that gathered together and came and conquered. They immigrated. High levels of immigration happened in northern Egypt. And then the king pretty much just lost control, was allowing for other marauders and other groups to come in and ransack northern Egypt. And then the Hyksos people, who were actually more Egyptian with Levantian cultural influences, they then just said, to hell with the government. And then they took over northern Egypt and then spread further down into about Mid-Nile Valley region. But yes, the Egyptians record when the Hyksos took over a large swath of the land of the Nile Valley. So yes, they record when they get their ass whooped, because that is recorded. So every time people say, "Oh, they don't do that," yes, they do. Yeah, they do. They recorded the difference between when the Cushites conquered northern Egypt. Of course, they call it Lower Egypt because they were looking at the way the river flows, but they call it Lower Egypt. They record when the Cushites came up and whooped that ass, and you had 12 Cushite kings. So that is recorded when the Cushites came and whooped that ass. So there is recording, and then we go from kings to pharaohs. So these things are recorded. So if they would have lost and went through this financial, because they record their financial issues as well. When everything is great and they're recording everything is going to hell in a handbasket. But there was no hell in a handbasket financially that was recorded during that time frame. Actually, everything was thriving according to their records. And we see that everything was thriving because we see, and it's not just taking their records into account. When there is construction, major construction projects going on, that means that the civilization is thriving. If you're in real estate, right? Let's say you were in commercial real estate. If you want to know if a city is thriving, go and count how many cranes are working in a city. right? If there's a bunch of cranes working, you go and you see a city and there's like 7 cranes, say 7, 8 cranes that are working, then that city is growing. So building construction is generally an indicator of a thriving society. Egypt was thriving during the entire time frame, no matter which time frame you pick, of the so-called Exodus. So yeah, they recorded. What up, Isaac? Oh yeah, the Earth. I was talking about the Earth stopped spinning. That's right. You talk about Joshua, you got to talk about how the Earth stopped spinning. Do you know what happens if their sun stood still for an extra 12 hours? There would be hardly no life. The whole world would have recorded that. Like they like to talk about how everybody records a flood story, even though everybody doesn't. Everybody would damn sure would have recorded this extremely, extremely extra long day of an extra 12 hours. And an extra, think about the other side of the planet. You go to sleep and you wake up at your normal time because you think the sun rises. Because even if the sun doesn't rise, your body is going to wake up. Right? You're not going to sleep an extra 12. It's supposed to be sunrise. The sun didn't rise. Oh shit, we got to sacrifice another goat because the sun didn't rise for 12 extra hours. Where is that? The world certainly would have recorded that. You saw some. Let's see, that would have, should have, could have happened at the time frame that would have, could have, should have happened. You would have had the Chinese would have, what we call Chinese today, they would have recorded it. You would have had Druid, people in some of the European communities would have recorded it. The African communities would have recorded it. Egypt would have recorded it. Greece would have. Well, it was still, they were Greek, but they hadn't really become Greek yet. But you would have had some recordings of it, but you have none. What? This is interesting. If there is no big bad wolf, then how would you explain the house got blown down? A hurricane? Was it the big bad wolf in Puerto Rico, or was that Hurricane Maria? And I live in San Antonio. If you go to the east side of San Antonio, it's that Gulf wind. The wind coming off the Gulf be blowing hard as hell, which is why they build a lot of these homes out of stone and rock here in San Antonio, because that's a heavy ass wind. We can use science today, but back in the day, you got to have a big bad wolf. Back in the day, you have to have a big bad wolf that caused the storm. And that big bad wolf name is Yahweh. Because Yahweh was a storm deity before he became the God of Israel. Stupid. That proves the 3 little pig story, just like the empty tomb explained Jesus. My favorite 3 little pig story, though, Swamp Wizard, is the cartoon version. Yes, I remember all them cartoons when I was a kid. Before y'all say something, the one where he was a jazz musician, but he sucked. But then when he got killed, the wolf got killed, and he went down to hell. Then he was only when he went to hell was he able. Oh, thank you for the love, Sphinx New York. Appreciate that. Only when he went to hell did he actually. Now he got that in him to play them blues, play the jazz. So you got to go to hell to get good at music. I don't know if y'all remember that version of the Big Bad Wolf, but I love that one. Dating myself once again. Oh, you in Beaumont? Yep. Drove real fast through Beaumont. I was going about no, actually I had to slow down in Beaumont, man. Y'all got that construction on the west side of Beaumont. It's like an interesting town though. Right. Many of their laws were taken from the Hammurabi's laws, who existed, and those laws were written well before the Israelites ever came into existence. Before there was an Israelite, the Hammurabi Code was already firmly established, known about, utilized by multiple civilizations thereafter, since they were the first conquered. Sargon was the first emperor who conquered from the Persian Gulf all the way up to the Mediterranean. Say Lucifer wasn't a God's musician. Yeah, they say that bullshit. Yeah, I think Hammurabi was an Akkadian, because when you look at the Sumerian Akkadian relationship, some kings were Akkadian, some kings were Sumerian, but of the same empire. But I think he was Akkadian. And that's an interesting thing, because Akkadians are Semitic, Sumerians are not Semitic, because Semitic is just that they come from a common language form. It has nothing to do with beliefs, but just a common language form. We still don't know where the Sumerian language derived from. It's just a standout language on its own. And it didn't branch out into other languages, whereas it really just got absorbed into the Akkadians, especially once Sargon became emperor. The word Lucifer is not pagan. The word Lucifer is just from the Greek word, it means just shining. From the Hebrew word, that means the shining one. It's just a translation into the Greek and then into the Latin, into the English. Lucifer is just talking about a planet Venus. That's all it's talking about. It has nothing to do with the devil. Right. Lucifer is just Venus. But how long? Oh shit, we done hit 3 hours. Yeah, I know what happens when we hit 3 hours. Time for us to start saying goodbye until tomorrow. Yeah, this has been a good conversation today. I really appreciate you guys. I had to do a hell of a lot more reading than I like to do. I like to have conversations. So hopefully tomorrow, when we go live at 12 noon, I will start on time tomorrow, because now that I got everything set up, I said a few things that I thought was right, but wasn't quite right. But of course, when you move everything around, you know, it's not until you first do it that you get it. Could have did a test, but I didn't. So we go live. For those who are new to this channel, we go live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. The show Deconstructing Christianity is a show based on helping people in their journey and their pathway to deconstructing. It is often encouraged for Christians to come over here and provide debate, because that helps. Actually, what the Christians don't realize is that when they come on here and debate, they're actually helping people who have made that decision to walk away from Christianity. Now, I probably shouldn't say this, because then they might get scared and not come on here anymore, but it actually helps, because it gives us the opportunity to look at where the mind is of Christians and where our minds used to be. That helps us to be able to see what the actual factual is, so that we can continue to walk away from this religion. As we have seen today, not one Christian or one Bible believer have provided a shred of evidence that a historical Jesus, a biblical Jesus, actually existed. We delved into the Exodus and other aspects as well, and as we see, not one, not even that is able to be proven. Did Hezekiah existed? Most likely, where there's accounts of him outside of the Bible that he probably existed by a contemporary, which is Sennacherib. So he probably existed. Did Mesha exist? Did Omri exist? most likely. But did the God cause Omri to lose because Shamash was given the sacrifice of Mesha's son? No. Did an angel kill 180,000 of Sennacherib's troops? No. Did Pontius Pilate exist? Yeah. Did he crucify Jesus? We don't know. He crucified a whole bunch of people named Yeshua and a whole bunch of other people named a whole bunch of other names to the point where he was being called up for war crimes or crimes against humanity. It was how we would phrase it today. Did Jesus live? No. Did the Jesus of the Bible? No. We have 4 different accounts of Yeshua's from Josephus' writing, who Josephus wasn't born until 34 CE. So he's not an eyewitness to anything. Neither are there any eyewitnesses to the story of Jesus, or no one has that. No one has written anything that ever met Jesus. Not one person, because we know the synoptic gospels weren't written until much, much later. Paul never met the Jesus character. He basically took Euripides. Well, actually, it was Luke who took Euripides, Bacchius, and converted and created a Pauline story to fit so that Paul can have authority, so that Luke can have authority. So we see that there is actually no one who met Jesus, the biblical Jesus. And there's no evidence of this Jesus ever existence. No evidence of walking on water, no evidence of feeding 5,000 people with a 2-piece fish sandwich. There's zero evidence of that. There's zero evidence of a resurrection, zero evidence of an ascension, zero evidence that he is God. It is all faith. And I can have faith in a unicorn and call it God, but it doesn't mean anything because there's no facts to support it. So it's been a great conversation and I appreciate it. I look forward to our conversation tomorrow, and no, I have no idea what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Most of the time, I don't know what we're going to talk about until I wake up in the morning. But I will be producing more videos today. There shouldn't be dogs and shit in the background as much because we moved. So it's quieter here. You know, it's kind of like the Hamilton. It's quiet uptown. Don't laugh at me, Debbie. I see that. But anyway, there's no dog. There's very few people. There shouldn't be any dog noises in the back. Hell, there's not even as many bird noises over here, which I found weird. But there's not as many bird noises either. So y'all have a great day until tomorrow. But please like, share, subscribe, continue to comment. I want to thank everybody who gives super chats, everybody who's a member to the channel, subscription holders on Facebook. So thank you guys, members on YouTube, super fans on TikTok, and those who gave gifts. Thank you for the gifts on TikTok. I greatly appreciate all the support that you guys give. Continue to like, share, and comment on the videos that I'm going to produce right after I eat lunch. So y'all have a great day, and always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations. And we click the button, man. I hit the button.